This country needs healing. This country needs medicine. But what this country really needs right now is...
Ball to open.
Ball to open!
Yes, and what do you do?
I can't really remember, but it was good.
What's that? What? That tapping, that rhythm, what are you doing?
Basically, Here come the drums!
So here it comes, the sound of drums. Here come the drums, here come the drums.
Hello, and welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to watch all of Doctor Who, all of it, the entire television program in random order. I'm Pete Paschal.
And I'm Chris Taylor, and that was The Sound of Drums done this week for The Sound of Drums with actual tapping out The Sound of Drums. We have The Sound of Drums every week, so it's so weird and wild to be here at that episode. But yes, we are a couple of guys who have loved Doctor Who for many years, and here we are.
Yeah,
watching it in random order.
I want to apologize to everyone for not letting you know in advance we were going to hypnotize you with our opening this time. If you were a little mesmerized by that, you're like, what's going on? I don't know what's happening. Maybe I should vote for this handsome dude for prime minister for no reason at all. No, sorry about that. That was an inadvertent side effect of just trying to stay in keeping with what we're doing. But how did we get to this point? Why are we doing what we're doing? Well, guys,
why are we here?
I want to go to previously on Pull to Open, and I'm going to get all over the map on this one because, it was a while back that we were actually at the Runaway Bride.
Oh my god!
And that sort of begat a yo-yo between, as we do here on Pull to Open, we go between the classic series and the new series of Doctor Who. But we've had some more David Tennant since then, and we had the almost Tennant-less episode of Blink recently.
Yeah.
But both of those episodes were considered very, very good episodes. Certainly Blink, one of the best of all time of the show.
Absolutely.
And that has rocketed us after a couple of stints in both the classic series, Pull Out of the Giants, as well as the new series in the Zygon Invasion Inversion last week. We have come to another Tennant epic. And Tennant is all over this one in multiple forms. And it is, of course, the trilogy to close out Series 3, Utopia, The Sound of Drums, and Last of the Time Lords.
Woohoo! Yeah, this is an exciting one. And what I want to do for our Christmas special of Pull to Open, which is this kind of is. We're recording this a little early. It will be released on Christmas Eve. And you may be listening to this on Christmas Day. Happy holidays to everyone who celebrates holidays. I should really be wearing my Bar Humbug hat as part of this to represent the Scrooges out there.
I wish I had a bad Christmas sweater for Doctor Who. I was actually, I thought I did, but I don't. The closest I have is Pikachu, and it seemed inappropriate. But I have Christmas up my background a tiny bit. See if you can spot the ornaments. I got a little light back there, so hopefully it's Christmassy enough. But Chris, I gotta say, I'm a little jealous of you. You have the actual TARDIS lights right there, and they're kind of a halo formation, in a
halo formation, and they could collapse at any minute because that's what these lights are wont to do. The TARDIS tends to fall off the light itself. So if that happens, we'll just run with it. We'll do it live, but it's going to be an extra special Easter egg if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify.
Exactly. I was just going to say, for those of you who don't have the visuals, this is your cue to go over to YouTube and go ahead and subscribe there as well, where you can get visuals along with your pod. It's great. Also, we love sharing things on YouTube. There's a lot of good conversation there that is happening. So please join in. Go ahead and subscribe there. Hit that bell button if you can to get the notifications whenever we have new content. Wow, I'm really fast forwarding to the feedback loop here, aren't I?
Do it.
We're in the feedback loop.
We're so excited. We're so excited about the Master Trilogy. We can't wait to get to it. So it's been a big week on YouTube, on TikTok. With our subscriber numbers.
YouTube and TikTok. So YouTube's going well, still growing. We're still putting the season 2 episodes of the podcast on YouTube every Wednesday, the new ones every Saturday. We have our plot summaries there too, all the shorts, but the shorts are primarily made for TikTok, and wow, TikTok has been incredible these past few weeks, especially since we did Dalek and Blink, two very sort of beloved episodes of the new series. Lots of people came out to comment. Lots of people came out to watch those. We've had a bunch of sort of viral hits around those, and we've had some amazing comments. I gotta say, like, the discussion around Blink has been great to see, because clearly, like, Blink is almost like this transcendent episode that's just like, you could show it to people new to the show, they'll love it. The fans of the show love it, and everyone wanted to show not just how much they loved it, but what they clearly upon repeated viewings have shown us. And I gotta say, the comments we got, it's woken me up to like connections that I can't believe I never saw. And
that's the thing about Blink. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, one of our biggest TikTok, I believe, was the one talking about the alternate ending of Blink, which I didn't know about before we did the show.
Yes, the alternate ending. There was some comments about that. The hit was mostly about with our most viral hit in terms of the videos we put up there. We did a quick short clip of when we talked about how moving the scene is in the hospital between old Billy and Sally.
Oh yes,
and that really
life is long and you are hot. Yeah,
might be the best scene of the whole episode. And
agreed.
There was just so much discussion on it, and there was this great comment from someone with the handle Golden Messenger 1998. And it says also to add, and he's talking about Kathy Nightingale.
Yeah,
her
Kathy
friend
Nightingale,
who got transported back in time, who was a brunette, said she named her daughter Sally. So it's interesting that two people were torn from her and their lives intersecting in some ways. And what they're referring to here is Billy's wife.
No.
Also named Sally, and I can't believe I never put this together. It's the implication is it
the
her
same
person? Well, they never.
Oh my god!
It. But if you make sense, she goes back to 1920, and Sally talks about how she lied about her age being 18. So you got to estimate she's like 20 or so in 1920, and then say she said her youngest was Sally. If you look at it, so it's like she's had a couple kids already. So you got to think if she has, say, maybe 35 or so, she has their third child. So
she would be of age. Yeah,
and you get say that goes to about 6. He's in 69, so that's about 30. Another 30 years, 35 years. You get that's about right to marry Billy, and it's oh my god.
How could that not have come up in any of the writings about Blink? How can Blink contain so much that we are still discovering new things, even after we watched it for the podcast, even after we researched it? That's incredible. Right? I wonder if Moffat intended that, or if it's just something we're seeing into it.
Yeah, I was so enthralled by this comic because, again, it added that whole extra dimension to it, and that it didn't stop there, because there's actually another comment that showed a thing I never noticed before, but it's true. And this is from a follower. Her handle, I assume it's a her, is Paige Rook. And it says, another detail I love, which I never see talked about, is that Sally and her friend are dressed like the Doctor and Martha. And I'm just like, it blows my mind. You go back to where they're sort of jumping over the fence, and she's kind of in that long coat that's sort of beige.
Right.
And Kathy has sort of a shorter jacket, and she's wearing some red that's sort of reminiscent of Martha's red leather jacket.
Yeah, she's in a leather jacket. It's exactly the same as Martha. Yep. By the way, I'm so sorry, Kathy Nightingale, that everyone just keeps describing you as Sally's friend. That's got to be irksome. It's a good thing that you went back to 1920. You don't get to see all these comments.
You don't have to live in Sally's shadow for the rest of your life. And she had a wonderful family, and still completed that connection. So wow, great stuff. Thank you, TikTok followers. You are the best. We've gotten almost 9,500 of them now. We're closing in on 10K on TikTok, and like I say, I promise we're gonna take it to the next level there. Honestly, it's getting to the point where the podcast is really just fuel for the TikTok videos at this point.
Yes. I've always said, are we a podcast, or are we 17 TikToks in a trench coat? We don't know. We'll find out. We'll let you know when we hit 10K. We will reveal. We will open the trench coat and do something special for that. Perhaps maybe doing some TikTok lives in the future. Take you behind the scenes of the show. So thanks for following. Please do follow us on TikTok if you haven't already. And we're also on Twitter and Instagram, pull2open63.
I just want to make sure everyone knows we're promising never to say the open the trench coat metaphor again. So
no, just open the kimono.
Yeah, totally. Oh, by the way, we're also on Instagram. We're going to be sharing more actual photographs on Instagram. We've started to do that a teeny tiny bit. Look for more of that in over the holiday season and into the new year. So
yeah, and don't look for any Instagram links on our Twitter because they've just been banned as we're recording this. It's just after the World Cup final on Sunday, December 18th, and Twitter has announced during the World Cup final, I think, to hide this fact that you will no longer allowed to post links to other social platforms on Twitter. Yes,
interesting.
So
I did not hear that. Although I do remember of old, I used to cover technology pretty closely, and I remember there was always kind of a Cold War between the social companies, particularly Twitter and Facebook and its properties, and then there, like, basically almost every other service or even website, if you shared on Twitter, would produce a card that had an image that it was associated with. But for Instagram, it was always just this link. It just never really appeared very well, and that would annoy people. But it was a sort of above the pay grade decision to kind of not follow the other social network.
Yeah, well, this goes even further. You can't even post links, and it's a certain sense of desperation from our very own John Sim master, Elon Musk. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
All right.
Just saying.
Could be. It's potential.
But speaking of Doctor Who news, speaking of actual news of people banning journalists, some more exciting news of Doctor Who news. We have a costume for Ncuti Gatwa.
Oh, well, I thought you were going to pull something out from beneath your camera shot there with the costume. But no, yes, you're right. Yeah, there's been just the other day. It might have been yesterday. I can't even remember.
It was
now,
yesterday.
But like they finally revealed Ncuti Gatwa's costume, which it signals to me they're probably like at some point in the shooting schedule where they're going to go on location and it's going to get revealed anyway.
Ncuti's shooting.
Yeah, Davies does this a lot in terms of getting ahead of the press. He's a master at it, and I'll describe it. And it's essentially, it's very doctory. It's kind of a coat and pants combo. It's orange plaid with essentially an orange T-shirt with it. So I'm going to ask you what you think before I give you my first impressions.
I love it. I think it's very doctorish, but it also feels very modern at the same time. It's kind of an Edwardian style on the check pattern on the long coat and the pants. The boots go very nicely with it. That feels very doctorish. And you've also got this single color shirt, which first of all suits Ncuti. Say that 15 times fast. Suits Ncuti very well. That coloring, and also it kind of takes me back to Eccleston and to Capaldi. In that sort of sense, you know, wearing a coat with a single clear color beneath it, not an actual shirt. So that it all feels very much in line with the Doctor. It feels like we talked on the show when we talked about the upcoming specials, the 60th anniversary specials, that the notion that the Celestial Toymaker might be dressing up the Doctor, and that might be the reason for Tennant's clothes change. Well, that's a checked pattern that Tennant's been put in. We know Ncuti's in a checked pattern. I'm wondering if this may be the first time that the Doctor hasn't dressed himself. It may turn out to be a Celestial Toymaker invention, and he's just like, hey, I actually kind of like this one.
Yeah, that's not bad. So a couple quick notes on the reveal before I give you my thoughts on it. It also shows that Ncuti Gatwa has a mustache. I want to throw that in because I know I'm weirdly obsessed with this, but it does make him essentially the first Doctor with facial hair, at least as presumably a continual thing as part of his overall look. And, again, not counting sideburns and stuff like that. So that's interesting. He looks great. And there's also he's got a necklace or two.
Yes, and lots
That's
of rings.
interesting. Yeah, so he's got some bling,
He's got some bling.
Yeah, so I think there's. Sorry,
did you notice the Gallifreyan symbols on his nails?
Ooh, I did not notice that. Wow, I didn't zoom. Interesting.
I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I believe if you zoom in, and some eagle-eyed Twitter people did do that. That you, if you zoom in on the nails, little Gallifreyan symbols.
Oh, interesting. I've only seen the photos of him with his hands in his pockets, so I don't know if that's a different photo or something. But
there were a few. There's the one with Millie.
Yeah. Yeah. The one with Millie, they're both got their hands in their pockets, as far as I know. So maybe I just didn't see the complete stuff. But anyway, generally, I think. Listen, here's the thing. I think the outfit isn't blowing me away. It looks very shooty. One thing I would say is that I don't know what the obsession is. I guess it's Britain, so I kind of get it. That the obsession Doctor Who has with long coats, right? I mean, if you think about the weather, okay, sure. But it is like every doctor seems to need to sort of have a long coat look or sometimes a short coat look. And that's fine. But I kind of thought that they might do something different here with Ncuti Gatwa, who, and I'm just sort of basing this, like, I don't know the guy, haven't seen a lot of his career, but just basing him on sort of stuff he's worn in public. Like, what do you remember the day he was announced and he was at the, I think it was the BAFTA Awards? That outfit looked really cool. Now that was a little daring for Doctor Who, but I kind of thought like something a little shorter cropped, something that allows a little more movement. This is why I like Matt Smith's outfit too. Obviously, he has a coat, but it was a short coat to begin with. It got a little longer as the time went on. But I think that also allowed for him to sort of more credibly sort of bound up and down the screen and use his athletic ability. So not to go too far down that. I mean, I think this is a fine outfit. And again, who knows what he'll end up. It might be more adaptable in the way that sort of Tennant would switch between suits and his look would change here and there. But,
I mean, and Capaldi too, right? The original Capaldi outfit, and Smith. The original Smith outfit was the short coat, the bow tie, and then he went to that long purple frock coat. So there's always room for change.
I need to qualify any reservations I have or anyone has, honestly, with like. Literally, if I had seen Matt Smith's outfit, I'm not sure if they did a costume reveal because I wasn't paying that close attention to it back in like 2009, 2010. But if they had shown his outfit before I'd seen the 11th hour, I might have thought he looked silly, right? And now, like once you see it in context, once you see it in a sort of introductory episode, and then also a performance more properly beyond just the script, like how is he playing the Doctor? Outfits tend to make much more sense. Like in other words, like right, like you're kind of like yes. Even like if you look back at say Colin Baker or Peter Davison stuff, like it all makes sense once you're like experiencing the show. So, any reservations people have, I think you got to sort of qualify with that. Like once we see his introduction, I think it's going to be him, and you're just going to just like that's it. It's just like the furniture. he's just shooting in his outfit, and that's his Doctor. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always less concerned by the costume than a lot of other people. I think that the Doctor can make any costume seem doctorish simply by having adventures in that costume, right? So, but I do think that it is kind of necessary. If you're introducing a new Doctor who is new in so many ways and groundbreaking in so many ways as Ncuti is, you might want to ground it a little bit more in the history of the show. You might want to reassure people, this is the same Doctor you know and love. It's the same guy because he has the same sense of style. Just fair. loves that Ed Morgan. Yeah.
Well, and we didn't really talk much about Millie Gibson and her outfit, which I guess that was also a reveal. I don't think there's much to say about it other than it's in contrast, but also companions, of course, they don't really have costumes in the same way. I mean, at least not since the JNT era. They swap out outfits and they simply more have a sense of style rather than like a costume per se that is consistent from week to week. And again, she's got a coat. And it's like, okay, I guess it's cold when they're filming.
Did anyone really care what Rose was wearing? It just It's much less important for the companion. But
apart
yeah,
from that Union Jack tank top, not so much. But yeah, no, they look great. They're filming awesome. We're getting Doctor Who. We talked a little bit about what RTD said in the latest issue of Doctor Who magazine last week, with the 8-episode season. One of the things we kind of touched on in some ways was that he actually said the words like no gap years in there in the context of the number of episodes. And I'd like to spend just a second talking about that, because I'm not sure if that means like, are we having every single year 8+ episodes of Doctor Who, or is that a reference to the other series within the sort of Doctor Who universe? I hope it is that we keep the main show going for a good long while with new episodes every single year. That's
my understanding.
Another pandemic or whatever.
Yeah, I think RTD is sort of thinking of this for the long term. I think that he is looking at the long term survival of Doctor Who, and it is essential that it remains on our screens and that it remains a fixture on our screens. And I think he knows that. I wouldn't be surprised if he does a season or two and then bows out. Having handpicked his successor, just get Doctor Who on a more even footing, as it hasn't necessarily been for a while. It looks like when all is said and done, we're going to find out that Doctor Who came a lot closer to just sort of being cancelled by default post Chris Chibnall, because it just couldn't figure out like what to do with it next. Who is next, as it were. So part of what RTD I think is coming back as the elder statesman of Who now, and kind of bringing in a new generation, making sure the legacy is secure, making sure that it airs every year, and making sure that traumatic event of 1987 will never occur again. Doctor Who will never be taken off the air again.
I amen to that, brother. And all I can add to that is that I guess he's barely begun, at least from this sort of perspective. But I hope in his mind somewhere he's also thinking, I've also got to groom my successor, or perhaps multiple potential successors, as he builds this empire, as he called it in that column. So that in 5+ years' time, there is a more healthy potential future for it. Because yes, as when you said that on the verge of being canceled, I feel like that's the story of Doctor Who, and it narrowly avoids it a lot, except that one time, and we had to wait 15 so years before we saw new stuff. So let's not do that again. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, and it was potentially cancelled with Colin Baker before that. Like it's escaped death more times than the Doctor himself has.
Even when Moffat took over, as I understand, it was kind of like if Moffat didn't do it, there was going to be problems.
And I think this may be why we're hearing about spin-offs, because the one thing you can do with spin-offs is set up a showrunner for that spin-off and basically make it an audition for the main show to replace RTD. I would love to see that, get a bit of competition going.
Genius in front of and behind the camera. All right, let's settle down though. We haven't seen any of his new work yet, so
but we have seen his old work. We have seen his old work.
Anyway, because
thank you,
folks. We've been chatting enough about this show and the time of year and our decorations that you can only see on YouTube, and now it is time to talk about what we're here to talk about, which is the trilogy to close out season 3. I call it the Master Trilogy.
I love it.
Utopia, The Sound of Drums, and Last of the Time Lords, all 3. And we begin every one of our commentaries, of course, with a little segment we like to call TLDW. Too long didn't watch, too long Doctor Who. You take your pick. But Chris Taylor does not get a chance to take his pick. He is now being forced into the cage where he must summarize the plot of this epic 3-parter in record time. That record time, though, is quite generous this time. It may be generous, depending on how much you really have to summarize. But because we give a full minute for every NuWho episode, you have a full 3 minutes to summarize the story of this trilogy. Are you ready, sir?
I am. I've closed all my tabs. Just a reminder to our fans that we do this blind. There's no quiz show scandal here. We do not have notes. We've not been given the answers beforehand. I haven't watched. I watched Utopia like a week ago. So
Me too.
yeah, so that's going to be the tougher one to summarize. But yeah, Peter's going to jump in at the 30-second mark to keep me on track, and hopefully I can summarize each episode in the 1 minute allotted. But there's a lot.
There's a lot to a lot.
I think I'm ready.
Okay, sir. Here we go. Here is the official pull to open summary of Utopia, The Sound of Drums, and Last of the Time Lords begins in 3, 2, 1, go.
So the TARDIS lands in Cardiff for just a fuel pit stop with the Doctor and Martha refueling because of the rift. But Captain Jack sees the TARDIS. He jumps on. The TARDIS tries to shake him off by going to the very end of time, the end of the universe, to a planet where the last of the human race is surviving. And the Doctor and Martha and Captain Jack talk a lot as they walk around. And then they're attacked by the future kind. But they get into this base where the last of the humans are trying to launch a rocket to some place called Utopia. And in charge of this rocket is a guy called Professor Yana, who with his assistant Chanto. But Professor Yana, he has a fob watch. He has a pocket watch just like the Doctor's. And oh my God, he's actually a Time Lord. And oh my God, he's actually the Master. So he regains awareness of being the Master, locks the Doctor out of the room where they've just launched the rockets with the humans going to Utopia, and but he gets shot by his old assistant Chanto and turns into John Sim inside the TARDIS, and the Doctor and Jack and Martha are being attacked by the future kind, but they escape with Jack's time travel wrist device, and they go forward to 21st century Earth, where the Master is Harold Saxon. He's Prime Minister. He's just been elected Prime Minister, and the Doctor sees him, and it's all part of this evil plan, and the Master gasses the whole cabinet, and he kills a journalist, and he introduces the world to the Toclophane, which is an alien species that he says we've just been introduced to, kills the US president. The Toclophane killed the US president when they arrive on this floating aircraft carrier when the Toclophane arrive, and then 6 billion Toclophane fall through this hole in time and start killing the 1/10 of the human race. Cut to a year later, Martha Jones is trying to fight this. Meanwhile, the Master has accelerated the Doctor's aging, so the Doctor is super old. There are various plans to try and get the Doctor out, try to get Captain Jack out of captivity with Martha's family, who's also being held in captivity. It doesn't quite work, but the Master it's revealed that the Toclophane are actually the future humanity. They've gone mad. They've come back. The Master's using them to kill everyone, but Martha has been traveling the planet, telling people to think of the Doctor at the right time, just as the Master's about to launch the Toclophane in these rockets to take over the rest of the universe and reestablish the Time Lords. And then the Master's wife shoots him and kills him. He refuses to regenerate. The TARDIS has been used to hold this paradox together, future humanity killing past humanity. It's broken. The paradox is broken. The year evaporates. The year vanishes. The Master dies. Martha goes home. And the Doctor finds the Titanic suddenly breaking into the TARDIS.
Wow, that was huge. You did it. You did it. Like kind of a photo finish, but yeah, you got it all.
I got the Titanic.
Would have been fine if you never got like if you skipped the Titanic part, which is kind of this extraneous thing they threw in at the end to tease the Christmas special. I think that would have been fine, but you even got that in. So well done, sir.
I think the Titanic is key in part because we had you had challenged the randomizer last time to take us to a Christmas episode, and it came close. Yeah. It came very close. So, but not close enough. Yeah, Phew, that's a lot. Yeah. But
That was huge. I don't think you missed much. I think it doesn't really matter because of the story, but you didn't mention the sort of funeral pyre and the ring at the end, which we can get to later. And I think you took the least time with the sound of drums.
Yeah.
And but you got a lot in there. I think you got the gassing of the cabinet. And honestly, there is a bit of extraneous stuff in there because there's a lot of like back and forth and stuff thrown in just for pacing. For example, the explosion in Martha's apartment, right?
Yes, probably there were a lot of comedy notes in this, and there were a lot of tragedy notes. Like, it's really funny, and it's also really dark. And
right.
that is the one moment that I think is just a little bit too much, wasn't perhaps necessary, is the TNT strapped to the back of Martha's television as they're watching the Master announce this first contact with the Toclafane.
Yeah, it's a bit silly. We could start there just because it was one of these weird details that, I mean, even from a plot point, it doesn't, like, what are you even trying to do here? And that, like, he could kind of probably kill them whenever. I think it is literally just kind of another obstacle. And the Master and the Doctor at this point know each other so well that every time there is a, like, well, why did the Master do this or not do that? Another part of that is, like, at the end of Utopia, he still seemingly anticipates the Doctor coming back, even though he left them at the end of the universe. And because he knows he will. He doesn't care how. He hasn't left him, and he doesn't know how. But he's like, the doctor's going to. If I haven't killed him dead, he's going to come and get me. That's just going to happen.
Leading to that great cold open in The Sound of Drums, where he's like, what this country needs right now is a doctor.
Yeah,
probably the coolest moment in all 3 episodes.
Yeah, it's amazing. So let's back up a bit and
should we take it episode by episode, because we have strung these together and they do form a coherent story. And
let's do it. But let's first zoom out a bit and look at what RTD was doing here and the sheer ambition of this. And of course, I think he got bolder and bolder as he kept going with the show in terms of bringing stuff back and the epicness of the story. Obviously, this being the first 3-parter. Formally, I guess, in the new series is an indication of that. But you think about, like, in the first season, he brings back the Daleks and does it, like, masterfully. And he has a big epic. We've done Dalek for the podcast. We haven't done Parting of the Ways, but the Parting of the Ways sort of, is the proper sort of culmination of that. We saw one Dalek, now we have a massive armada and all the sort of impossible stuff that goes with that. So that was really good. Then in the second season, there's the Army of Ghosts Doomsday, which, spoiler alert, brings back, like, the season is about the Cybermen, but then it puts them both together in something that kind of almost shouldn't work, but really, really does. I mean, we haven't done that for the podcast yet, so we'll get back to it when we do.
Canary Wolf,
and then this time it's kind of like, well, yeah, like the third one, like, what's next logically to bring back from the classic series and do well? It's the Master.
Gotta be.
And I love how what he does here is he doesn't just bring him back, but brings him back, modernizes him, gives more insight, I would say, into the Master and his relationship with the Doctor than we've ever seen.
Yes. Confirms that they're not related.
Yeah.
Which I'd totally forgotten about that part.
There's a good chunk on Gallifrey here as well. And
the untempered
really
schism.
Extremely epic. And I like how he fits it in with his own mythology that he's done, which is that he has the Time Lords as the Doctor. They're all gone. And there's this bit of dialogue from the first season with Eccleston where he talks about, like, they're all gone. And Rose is like, well, maybe some of them survived too. I mean, that Dalek survived. And he's like, no, like, I'd feel it. I'd feel it in here if they did. And so to bring back the Master, you've got to deal with that. I like that. Like, if this, like, I love Moffat, and as everyone knows, we were giving him huge points for Blink, but Moffat's the kind of guy who would just do it without explanation, and people can just, like, make up their headcanon. And I love Davies for this, that he cares. He's like, no, I said that, or that, whether it was him or not, someone said that, it's part of canon. I have to deal with it, even if it's just throwaway dialogue. But he doesn't just do throwaway dialogue. It makes it a central part of the story and the season, the way they set it up with the fob watch and human nature and family of blood. It's just such a genius way of stringing it together, because that's a good story in its own right, but also as a foreshadowing of this, so good.
So good. And it also strings together the overall Davies arc, or one of them, of the Doctor's hand, which is used for his biological imprint multiple times in this. It's definitely Chekhov's hand. It appears in all of the episodes, the Master uses it to great effect. But that's something that rewards long-time watchers who've been, watched Christmas Invasion, season or two earlier. But yeah, this is Davies at the absolute top of his game. And it's extraordinary to me. This is still, I'll just say it out right now. This is one of my favorites multi-parters in all of Doctor Who. And I was actually listening to a couple of other podcasts who have covered the same ground. A lot of people don't seem to like it, and I can see the things that you want to pick apart about this, but this just,
there are things you could pick at.
Yeah, definitely. But this has my heart. I mean, it's so it glides over its plot problems so quickly that you don't even realize that they're plot problems. And also for me personally, I'll just interject. This was very, very important for my wife and myself. We bonded over Doctor Who. This was one of those three-parters. We briefly. So we should get to the fact that it uses music, and one of the songs that it uses is the Scissor Sisters, a song called "I Can't Decide," which is now only available on the DVD or in the UK if you're watching iPlayer. It's not available in the US, not available on streaming, not available on the Blu-ray, which is an absolute travesty. It's a great scene. It actually, it makes you feel sorry for the Doctor, the way that the Master is keeping him. It cuts to 1 year later, the Master's keeping the Doctor basically as a dog. It's basically elder abuse. And he sings this song. And it just, we fell in love with the song so much. We were joking at one stage, and actually only half joking. We were going to use this as the first dance at our wedding.
I can't decide.
I can't decide whether you should live or die.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, it's weird. Honestly, this is one of those episodes that I assume it's a rights issue, right? Because of the song. But it's an interesting call to just excise the scene altogether rather than replace the song. And maybe it's because the Master is mouthing the lyrics during it. So maybe that'd be a problem. But I see that scene, even though story-wise there's not a lot going on, I feel it's so essential to set the tone, the vibe, and the feel for what I honestly love most about this, in that it shows what the Master's vision is of winning. Finally we see it,
every week on the show we have what if the evil plot succeeded. This is the evil plot succeeding, actually. Just as the Zygon invasion and inversion was. This is another reason why the randomizer took us here,
and I have things to say about that when that comes up, but just for this episode to show that, for this, we've seen the Master time and again, obviously in the classic series, some of his plots make sense, some of them don't, some of them are big time, some of them are small time, but we never ever sort of understand, well, what do you want? What is your vision? Once you're, whatever plot it is, whether it's the Doomsday device from Colony in Space or taking over Azal or getting the powers of the Keeper ship, what are you going to do with that? What's your plan? And here we finally see it, right? He wants to be not just the center of some empire, but it's more about proving he's right to the people that have either opposed him or he cares about, which obviously is the Doctor and his friends here. And that whole scene where the Doctor's in a tent, he's clearly been in this tent for a year, and he's got a dog dish that literally says dog. Yeah. And the Master, you get the sense this is kind of probably a daily routine for him to kind of just get up and humiliate everyone who opposes, because he has the Martha's family, dressed up as servants, and he spits out the
serving
coffee.
Him tea,
tea or what, basically probably he's just day after day just mean and constantly, clearly just needling in these people, see, you never should have opposed me. See, I win. I'm the best. You guys suck. And he needs that. It just speaks so much to his psychology. I think it's a real shame that scene has been excised from various versions.
It is. And you can still see, he rolls the Doctor around in a wheelchair, just sort of bashes him against the wall, completely careless. There's a bruise on his wife's eye, which is dark. A lot of these things are dark.
Yeah. By the way, we're not quite in order of episode, but that's okay.
No. But we're still looking at the 10,000 feet view, right? We're in an aircraft carrier at the moment, looking down on this incredible trilogy. But what you see at that level, I think, is the way that it pivots from comedy to tragedy and back again, and it just, and the tragedy of it is so dark, so dark that I still feel it. I feel it almost in a childlike way. Like there were certain things when I was a child, there were certain things that kind of scared me that adults would just say, "What? I don't understand." It was stuff like Dr. Zarkov and Flash Gordon losing his memory. Like that really got to me. Or like Superman losing his powers in Superman 2.
Right.
And these things just sort of get you at when you see your heroes being just trashed like that. As part of the plot. And that's what this does. I mean, it not only kind of abuses the Doctor more than I think almost any story in the history of the show. It just abuses him, and it abuses the human race as well, because the Toclafane is us in the far future, driven mad. And like the Master didn't do that part. That's the part that I forgot before I watched this. The Master didn't create the Toclafane; they created themselves. I mean, he gave them the name, just a Gallifreyan, nursery rhyme, apparently, but they did
that's
it
a little
themselves.
underexplored, I gotta say, in terms of like that both in terms of like how and why that happened, and also, I mean, you kind of get an explanation why, but at the same time, you don't really feel it. And also, like just peeling apart that really, really dark layer, which is darker than it's even given a time for. It's just, even in 3 parts, there's not enough time to sort of peel back everything. But that idea of like the human race going back and sort of killing itself, which is more how this plot is revealed or sort of unraveled when they kill the paradox machine, and so it can't happen anymore. But like peeling that back from a psychological level adds another layer of darkness to this that I think it doesn't. You don't need it, but it is an interesting thing to think about. And there's plenty of darkness to go around in this one for sure.
Yeah, and the Toclafane killing 1/10 of the human race, like that's dark. Wow.
There's a lot of this stuff, but let's rewind a bit and to the setup in Utopia, because there's a lot of stuff in there I want to unpack when we get to Sound of Drums. But speaking of dark, so this actually goes with what is still, as I understand it, the modern take on the end of the universe. Which is a dark sort of bleak end. Like the universe is basically going to expand forever, and eventually all the stars will go out, and there simply won't be any heat or energy, and whatever remains will probably be around black holes or whatever. But it's going to, at some point, everything's going to wink out, and then the universe will just go on and become like an exercise in physics, frankly. As it expands forever. So this is supposedly zooming in on the last of that. And honestly, whatever happens with the fabled Utopia, which clearly doesn't exist, again, there's more darkness there. I mean, everyone's going to die eventually. So, I mean,
including the universe.
There's always going to be another group for the last person, and they sort of went even further with this in Capaldi, although it's a little unclear whether there's like a big crunch or whatever. But it was an interesting thing to do, and it's surprisingly something classic Who really didn't mess with much. They talked about the beginning of the universe, but not the end of the universe. And NuWho's a little obsessed with it, but I believe this is definitely the first time that they went.
Speaking at the beginning of the universe, I definitely got Terminus vibes with the Terminus or Frontiers. I can never remember which one shows us the beginning, the Big Bang, at this, and puts us at the center of the universe. Terminus. It is Terminus. Okay, so you see that map where you're like, oh, we're at the center of the universe, and they kind of get a similar map with Utopia, like, oh, it's in the corner of the universe. That's where it is. But yeah, I mean, Professor Yana even has that great line about, galaxies. I miss those, like when the galaxies died. Hundreds of years ago.
I think Davies did this really well about sort of these sort of big sci-fi endings. I mean, if you think about it, this is, I think the first time they'll go to the end of the universe, but he went to the end of the world in episode 2. And these are like, why not? Like these are big sort of real things to kind of explore. And I like that Doctor Who kind of went into this real cosmology world for at least a little bit, and still has license to do that whenever it wants. And get a little bit of that taste of sort of mind-blowingness if like you sort of study these concepts and really think about like how small we are and how big these things are and these forces and space-time, etc. So a lot of points for that.
It's incredible. It's a show for it's a show for everyone. This is what Davies does so well. He makes it mass appeal. Kids can watch this and enjoy it, but also he's taking real educational concepts like this is how the universe is going to end. Everything is just going to fade into nothing, not with a bang, but with a whimper. He teaches you the actual meaning of the word decimate. By having the Toclophane, one tenth of humanity is killed by the Toclophane. Kids watching that, I'm never going to forget.
Put that together. I never put that together for this episode. Like, I never thought of the word decimate as literally like a. Like, oh, yeah, I guess that is what it is. That's pretty funny.
1/10. I believe it was a Roman idea originally. You kill 1/10 of the enemy, or you set an example when you invade a new place. But well, I really, we often talk about this later in the program, but I really want to hear how your kids felt about this trilogy, because I'm just thinking of all these things. Like, it affected me on as if I was a kid watching this. Kind of scary. Did they get the same reaction?
Yeah, they loved it. I mean, Jack thought it's a Viscount banger. That's of course our top rating system. That's what he told me right before I sat down to tape today. I'll let you know what my rating is later. Grace really liked it. We tend to watch it pretty late, so she was a little tired, but she thought she was excited to keep watching this one, even though it was like 3 nights in a row. Although actually we skipped a night or two there. But they had rave reviews. I think also because we've done so much Tennant lately, I think David Tennant is now Grace's favorite Doctor.
And with good reason. I mean, it really shows why he is so many favorites in this episode. It's a masterful, as it were, performance from Tennant, who really feeds off Sim as well.
So Utopia,
so they weren't too scared then by the stuff like the Toclophane being that kid who we saw in Utopia.
No, here's the thing, and this is why I think we're getting a little bit at the heart of the matter of why people might have issues with it, and it's probably has more to do with Davies' style than the actual story. In that the mix of darkness and sort of comedic tone, I think, is perfect for this show of Doctor Who, which obviously is cross-generational. I think folks wanting sort of more of the darkness, which is probably this is again my feeling about sort of criticism in this show, and because I feel like a lot of people sort of focus on things like the Dobby Doctor and things that are arguably comedic, but I mean, I don't see them as overtly comedic, as more just sort of tonally aware of the audience. And I think going really tragic and brutal would probably be a mistake. I think you drive away more people than you would sort of gain in terms of like the resonance you'd have with the hardcore audience, right? So that's how I sort of feel this sort of the decisions are made here. So I feel like, in other words, Grace did not be like, I have to hide behind the sofa, or I'm confused about this because it's tearing at my soul. But it does. I think it still got out enough that like, oh, I'm sad about this, but then the Doctor still wins, and yay. So
right. It happens fast enough that there's that kind of resolution.
It didn't traumatize her for life, but she was caught up in it for sure. So back to Utopia. So Utopia's a good story, I think, on its own right, in that it's talking about the end of the universe and these last survivors, and you're rooting for them and the things they set up. And then you see Derek Jacobi show up, and you're like, oh wow, this guy's there's something interesting about him. We'll see how it goes. I don't think this is a bad thing in terms of where the story goes, because one is that if there's a weakness in it, it's obviously the future kind, right? Like they're just these people with fangs, and they have no motivation other than to like do violence, and there's really nothing to them other than be sort of an adversary and a plot device at the end.
They're very, very Mad Max, and the first of many movie references, I think, in this trilogy.
Yeah.
That Davies is just sort of straight up stealing. And this may be, slightly less of a steal than the other ones, but yeah, Future Kind feels totally Mad Max-ish. And why have they got all fangs? What is that? Just like the final form we evolve into?
Yeah,
I'm not
it just
sure.
feels like there's not much thought put in there. But to be fair, like there doesn't need to be. Like they're really just there to kind of like provide some extra motivation and imminent danger at the end.
They're the ticking clock. Mm-hmm.
And so, but I actually really like the stuff because a lot of the episode, honestly, if we care about it at all, I mean, we do care about it. I mean, it's like I said, I think it is a kind of an interesting plot with these survivors. But the thing you really start to zero in on in that first half, anyway, is the relationship between the Doctor and Jack. Which is this big unresolved thing from the end of series 1. Now, obviously, we've seen at this point Jack Harkness as immortal person in Torchwood. But here we get the answer of why the Doctor left him, and it brings out a little bit of that darkness. Yeah, a little. And he's also very kind of like the way he says it, like "you abandoned me," and he's like, "Did I?" Like he's busy life, moving on. Wow.
I abandon people all the time.
Yeah.
I also love it. It's a great, so many great sort of moments of script writing economy where Davies, like if you hadn't seen Captain Jack before this, if you hadn't watched Torchwood, if you hadn't seen season 1, Dr. Dances, any of that, you would know who Jack was because he's just literally flirting with everyone who he meets from Martha onwards. And, yeah, and he also manages to talk about Rose, brings that in. Like, with very few lines of dialogue, Jack establishes who he is, what the issue with the Doctor abandoning people is, what the issue with the Doctor and still not being over Rose is, and also quickly identifies that Martha fancies the Doctor, and the Doctor doesn't know that she's there. He sees it. He's like, "You too, huh?"
Yeah, and also like what Jack is now, and what's his deal, and obviously it's used as a kind of a device to get them to the end of the universe, which works pretty well. And then the better scene is when he and the Doctor are talking through the glass, and he's sort of in the radiation zone of getting the engine of that rocket fixed.
Yes.
And the Doctor's just talking about you really shouldn't exist. And I like this as kind of like an in-universe idea and sort of almost a meta comment, like in that, okay, so he's a fixed point in space and time, essentially a living fixed point in time.
Yeah.
And that's not supposed to happen. But he still exists. And I like the meta comment that like, you're unkillable. How is that interesting? Like if you were never, and I to be fair, I think Torchwood has made it interesting, and I think even this episode sort of makes it interesting. Like it's sort of the same problem where you have not exactly the same problem, but a similar problem in Friday the 13th movies with Jason. Well, if he's unkillable, like what can you? But then the more creative versions of Friday the 13th are like, well, what can you do to him? And what can, like, you could slow him down, you could chain up Jack.
Yes.
Do all these other things, and it's like, okay, just because he's like invulnerable doesn't mean he's super strong.
A couple of things on Jack, not to fast forward too much throughout all of Jack's arc here, but I think it's important to introduce the fact that he probably is the face of Bo.
He's the face of Bo.
He's the face of Bo. Well, RTD tried to walk it back on the commentary.
Here's my theory on that. Okay, he did. He sort of walked it back, and I actually hadn't listened to the commentary because we were so pressed for time on this one. But I'm pretty sure he's even challenged. I think it was Julie Gardner, whoever's talking to him there. It's like, come on, man.
Make a decision. Yeah.
What I think that is that maybe in his mind he was thinking about his exit and what future showrunners might want to do with Jack. And if, for example, some future showrunner for whatever, whether it's Doctor Who or wanted to depower Jack and have some definitive death for him, I don't think he wanted to take that away, that he had to become the face of Bo. So, because that's one of the things he said also on record, where it's like, look, at the time when he did the ring scene in Last of the Time Lords, where, someone picks up the ring and you hear the laugh, he had
stolen straight from Flash Gordon, by the way. Yes.
But according to him, he at that point had not planned to bring the Master back. Of course, he did at the end of time, but that's him, like, honestly, on my view, being a good showrunner in that, like, look, someone might want to bring him back. And if they do, here's your get out of jail free card, which I got to say, this is probably a very predictable comment if you know my commentary. I am so appreciative of that, in that, like, yes, start where they left. Don't just have people come back with no explanation, Chris Chibnall.
Yes. or Moffat. I mean, Moffat definitely went towards the I don't care how the Master comes back. The Master never explains, which was a classic series thing. We've seen that. We've seen that over and over again. We've visited a lot of Master stories.
See my previous comments on this in our Mark of the Ronnie podcast, guys. Anyway, go Google it.
Yes.
Just go to your podcast app.
But a couple of things that I spotted this time that I hadn't before. First of all, in Utopia, the Doctor and Martha mention the face of Bo in front of Jack. Jack doesn't react. I think that's probably a little bit of a mistake that snuck into the script process. He should have maybe, cocked an eyebrow, but then been distracted by something. And he's like, face of Bo, that sounds like what I was called when, distracted by something else. Like, at least throw something like that in there. But also, I didn't remember that right at the end in Last of the Time Lords, Jack sort of has this moment of vanity, as he describes it, which is very Jack, to be like, I do actually still seem to be physically aging, which is great because that does help us when Jack does return in the Whittaker era, when he has clearly aged a little bit more.
And if you want to get picky about it, he's clearly older in Torchwood as Torchwood went on. Yeah, which is a little. I mean, this is being silly and picky because here's what I'd say, because he supposedly rewound to 100 years ago when he first arrived on Earth. So he aged 100 years and seemingly didn't age a day, and then seemingly started aging kind of normally. Here's how I explain this, by the way, just to throw in more things. He's actually. Have you seen all of Torchwood? So
most of it, yeah.
He's killed a lot, and he's actually blown apart at least once. And I would say that idea of, like, if your whole body is actually blown apart, I mean, nothing ages you like getting blown to smithereens. Oh my God. Right?
Hate it when that happens.
That's my thought. He's basically do enough damage, and it adds like 10 or 20 years to Jack's life.
But yeah, I like it. I'd forgotten that he'd built that thing in there. It is just another example of how RTD covers all of his bases like a good showrunner should, and allows Jack to look a little bit older next time he comes back. And who knows, he may be back again. Maybe we'll have some kind of resolution where we see him turning into the face of Bo, and it is definitive for all time.
Yeah, I think I liked seeing him come back with the Jodie Whittaker era. I do felt I wasn't satisfied enough on both of those, right? Not in the same way when he comes back and say Journey's End, which I probably like better. So I wouldn't mind at all to see him come back again and just have a really good Jack episode where he's really right there as part of the story and instrumental to figuring out whatever they're doing. So
yeah, it does sort of seem like we're Chibnall was setting us up for that, and then he didn't deliver. So shorter version, more Jack, please, RTD.
So shall we talk a little bit about the masterful Derek Jacobi?
We should, because this is what happens in Utopia. Is like, it all comes down to that scene. It's all set up for that scene. And I remember being surprised at the time, which is brilliant because it means that both RTD and Moffat have surprised me with master reveals. I was surprised by Missy.
I was so surprised at the time. I'm glad you said it. I was not just surprised. I was right there with Martha and the Doctor. Like, literally edge of the seat. When you get the fob watch out, you're like, and you're just like, wait a minute. Who could he be? And it's like, in the Master, you go through your Time Lord Rolodex, right? And then you're kind of like,
yes, could it be Rassilon? Could it be...
And what's it going to be? And then, of course, as you're doing it, it's probably, and then just as you're like, it's probably, like, you hear the Ainley laugh, and there's the Delgado voice, and you're just like, OMG, like, you're just like, it's him.
You are that Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's pointing at the TV, right? Yeah. You know the one I mean? He's just him.
The music's so good, and we'll talk more about the music later, but it's like,
but it's also you have to give the sound of drum. Oh my God, we've got to talk about that. But let's give credit where it's due to Derek Jacobi, because this is, I mean, I don't think any other actor could have pulled off that change from an old fuddy-duddy professor to ultimate evil, and he embodies both of them.
His switch flips. Like it's like, even, you think back to the last time we saw this with Tennant and going from John Smith to the Doctor. I mean, there's enough shared there. I mean, yes, he clearly plays them differently, but like Jacobi becomes a completely different character. Like his inflections are different. The way he stands is different. Like he just completely turns into this different guy, and like you're kind of in the mind of Chantho, who is just like, what
exactly
just happened?
It's just amazing. Like he comes in like he's Santa Claus. He's got the bushy white eyebrows. He's kind of duddering around. He sounds a lot like I don't know if you've seen I, Claudius. Highly recommend that. BBC, Masterpiece Theatre, brilliant stuff from the 70s in which he plays Claudius. So he's got a bit of that sort of Claudius stuttering thing going on, and then suddenly, when that switch flips, something in his eyes changes, and suddenly those eyebrows go from bushy Santa eyebrows to attack eyebrows. Years before Capaldi. It is phenomenal, and it really contributes to, I think, one of my favorite moments in all of Doctor Who. Old and new, and it almost feels like you're passing the torch from one to the other. Like Jacobi feels like old Who, and then suddenly he's new, and then suddenly he's John Sim, who just really how do you follow Derek Jacobi? You just go nuts, and you just do
kind of the opposite in a way,
and he's
totally
so
over the top,
physical. He's so physical. John Sim is so physical in a way that Matt Smith was for the Doctor. When Matt Smith kind of comes in, and right, and he's just sort of waving arms all over the place. The way he sort of cranks up the TARDIS kind of immediately, he almost
does like a handspring to get up from the TARDIS floor.
Yes,
or something. Like he just bounds right up. Oh, hello, and he's just bounding around and I love his Jacobi has some great lines. Like he gets to kill someone, which is great, and it's not just anybody. Like it's not just a throwaway person. It's like the trusted, beloved companion of his former persona. That's wow. Just the fact that he just does that is great. He gets to look to camera and say the line, "I am the master." And apparently they sort of altered the script a bit, or at least there was a back and forth about the script on should it be Jacobi who says, "Say my name," or should it be Sim? And they gave it to Sim because they really wanted Jacobi to be the one to go like I am the master, and just do it. And wow, so good. And he just pulls it off in that I reminded of Ricardo Montalban in Star Trek 2, that sort of not not over the top, he's almost at the top, but he's he gets you to believe it. And then John Sim, like you say, totally the opposite. And my favorite line he has is, "Oh, how about we have a nice cup of tea and I can tell you all about my evil plans, I don't think." And it's not only it sends up the whole, it's such a great meta comment, on the thing. I'm just going to explain it. No, I'm not doing that. I'm just abandoning you here, and I'm seeing, and I'm winning now. Bye-bye. Awesome.
Yes. Speaking of meta commentary, shall we fast forward to the Sound of Drums? Which is possibly, I would say, the most meta episode. Or if you take it as a two-parter with Last of the Time Lords, the most meta story in all of Doctor Who, because we have the Sound of Drums, which is just an amazing way to take the theme song of Doctor Who and make it an essential component of the show.
Yeah.
We've all been, and you start to think, oh my God, have I been hypnotized all these years by the Sound of Drums? By just sort of listening to, yes, what's going on here? But also the time tunnel. The time tunnel is the untempered schism.
Oh, yes.
So
That's
not just the theme tune, but the opening credits have been incorporated in the show itself.
I hadn't thought too hard about this. But let's pause there for a second, because if you think about it, is then the comment about what people do when they see the schism, is that a commentary on Doctor Who fans versus regular people?
Yep.
Whatever. Yep. Some go mad, which is probably us, Chris. Let's be real.
Yes.
Some run away. Some are just like, I can't handle this.
Handle the show. I'm running away. I love that element of doubt, right? Where they're like, Martha and Jack is like, well, which one are you? And he's like, oh, I'm the one who ran away, of course.
Love that.
Well,
love that
are you, Doctor? Are you sure you weren't driven mad? A little bit mad yourself? A little bit?
Yeah, a little bit.
Madman with a box?
Little bit. I don't want this to turn into Batman and the Joker or whatever, even though there's obviously whenever you have an antithesis, there's a little bit of those vibes. But yes, 100%. Who are the people inspired then? The people who create them? Probably.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. The RTDs and the Stephen Moffats of the world who watch the show as kids, love it.
You know what? I'm gonna go mass here, and it's just like everyone who likes the casual fans. They're inspired. They like it. They like the show. And it doesn't mean they have to go out and make things, but if you're a hardcore fan, I got to say, man, you're driven mad by this show. It's completely self-aware of like I do crazy headcanon about the most remote things in the background of episodes. So that's madness.
Totally. I'm totally hearing the sound of drums. Yes, all the time. Which is another wonderfully tragic component that we find out. Like this must have been going in the master's head all along.
Yeah, which is a bit of a plot hole, not in this story, but just generally in Doctor Who. Like he's never mentioned it before, right? So I think you kind of need to headcanon that a little bit in that it must have gotten worse over time. And certainly the closer he got to when sort of the feedback loop starts, which is clearly in the end of time, it probably got worse and worse.
That might be it. That might be it. Although I would love, here's a chance for you folks driven mad who are by Doctor Who are also YouTube obsessives. I would love to see a YouTube video where you sort of take snatches of like Delgado dialogue and Ainley dialogue and maybe even Eric Roberts and just kind of overlay the sound of drums so that it sounds like the dialogue is to the beat.
Yeah.
I would love to see that to fully headcanon this notion that the master's been hearing it in his head the whole time.
Speaking of what we were talking about earlier, which is rights to things they couldn't use, apparently, and this is sort of rewinding back to Utopia a little bit, but with that little bit where they have the slices of dialogue, it's really just Amy's laugh and one line from Delgado. They wanted to actually be really completist and put in something from Eric Roberts, who was obviously the master in the Doctor Who TV movie. And apparently Fox wouldn't give them the rights because they needed to do, you have to do it properly. And it wouldn't happen, which is, that's kind of lame of Fox, I got to say. I really wish they would sort of correct that. I'd love to see a special edition where they do have a little bit of that.
Well, doesn't Disney own Fox now? So they could actually do that?
Oh, that's actually a good point.
Yeah, now they can put the Doctor Who TV movie on Disney Plus.
I like that. That would be amazing. Because with the sort of consolation prize version, I was thinking of, obviously Eric Roberts has come back for some big finishes as the master, so it's like you could pull something from that, but then it wouldn't be as resonant because it's not like the thing everyone's seen. So, but it's interesting that this trilogy seems to be like the rights issues episode as well for some reason.
Yeah, it really is. And who knew that rights to the Doctor Who TV movie would ever be an issue for anyone ever? You'd think Fox would be like, please take it, we'll pay you.
Just don't have the right phone number.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the sound of drums. I mean, it feels like this RTD wrote this with like the master becomes prime minister and worked back from that, which I think is great. I think these sort of writer exercises are pretty awesome. And again, right, as a person who ticks all the boxes or as many as he possibly can to ensure he pulls it off credibly, Davies does this because it's like he has the sort of plus or minus 18 months thing that lets him sort of go back a little bit. And then he's got his hypnotic thing, which builds on, like, we know the master is a hypnotist. And
there's the reference to The Runaway Bride, in which we learn that Harold Saxon was defense minister.
Yeah, and then there was all the stuff. They actually even mentioned Harriet Jones. So he sort of rose to fame shortly after Harriet Jones fell from power. And so it's all tying into the Doctor Who sort of political universe, I guess, that they've already established.
Which is just brilliant stuff. And also, speaking of the political universe, that scene in the cabinet room is
right.
I mean, that is in terms of masterclass in script writing, which we talked about on the show in context of Blink and Dalek. But I would add that scene because there's such economy to it. Like it simultaneously explains how the Master has actually done this. In part, it's the hypnosis. We find out that out later. But also, it's in part the fact that these other prominent politicians kind of just fled their own parties and supported him. You know, big shades of Donald Trump there, right? The sort of oh, he's a joke. Oh, he's winning. Oh, okay. I guess I'm supporting him now.
Yeah, it's a cynical note, but it rings 100% true because it is true. You know, people go where the wind blows, and the idea of people just sort of sticking to their own values, philosophies, etc. in the political system. I mean, come on, let's be real. It just doesn't happen. You go where you follow the winners, and
indeed,
100% believable.
So the Johnson Master gets to tell them that, berate them for that, and also prove how mad he is. Like, there's that great scene where it's like, no, that's not a joke. This would be a joke, smiley face. And he's almost Joker-like in that scene, right?
Yeah.
Whereas this is me, frowny face. And the iconic scene with the gas mask and the thumbs up, like that is, if you were to cut together a reel of like John Sims' best moments, that would be one of them.
It's
right?
like one of these things too.
The gas mask thumbs up.
I got to say, as a classic Who fan, to see the modern show, like it's not a thing you could really. That scene is a thing you could never pull off in the classic series. I mean, you could do it; it would just be 100% different. And the way they sort of cut from wide shot to tight shot, the way he throws all the papers out at the beginning, and they do that to maximum effect. And there's like it's really great editing throughout that. And you know, can you imagine that happening in the Pertwee era? I could sort of see it, but it would not have the same effect. And
you wouldn't have the pacing. I mean, this is all happening within the first 3 minutes of The Sound of Drums. It's extraordinary. So
that's why, like, as a classic Who fan, it's just so satisfying to see like your favorite show at the time. Anyway, I'm putting myself in the brain I had at the time. Like, it's now getting the modern storytelling, not just effects and not just, you know, the quality of the overall production and the production values, but the storytelling was modernized. And you're just like, yes, this is what I've wanted to see all along. I wanted to see the definitive master scene where he's just kind of owning a bunch of people and just showing how bad he is. And that's it. That's it right there.
And the fact that the gas comes out of those ubiquitous speaker things that were everywhere in that point in time, like that's how you had your conference calls. Brilliant use of what Doctor Who does best, everyday objects. There were people at the time who felt that it was a bit Batman 1966, like that, plus the TNT thing on the back of the TV. To which I say, yes, and so what?
Yeah,
exactly. This I have an overarching point to make here, which has been made many times before, so I'm just going to steal it. Great artists, good artists copy, great artists steal. And Davies is outright stealing some of the best stuff here. The reversal of time is so much from the Superman movie. The ring and the laugh is straight out of Flash. The Toclafane themselves look like the torture droid on the Death Star. From Star Wars, right? Princess Leia.
Very much.
Floating orb with spiky things. That's totally Star Wars. Also totally Star Wars. The funeral pyre, straight from Return of the Jedi, feels exactly like it. Yeah, I mean, it just...
the same funeral pyre company they got those logs from, because it's like, oh, wow, I guess that's just your standard funeral pyre setup. It's about that high and logs about this long, and you put the guy like this on the top. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, you almost want to hear the Luke Skywalker theme in the background. Like, if you're going to steal it, just straight up steal it. But it's fantastic.
It'd be funny to have like Mark Hamill walk in there. Excuse me. Oh, wait, mine's over there. Sorry. Hold on. My bad.
Yes. Oh my God. Which, by the way, I know as a Star Wars nerd, that scene was last thing filmed for the film. It was actually done in the Redwoods of Northern California, right by Lucasfilm HQ, because they were just like, oh yeah, we kind of need a funeral pyre scene, so they just threw it in at the last minute. So
I'd be disappointed if you didn't know that. That's good to know. I didn't know that was.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's all back of the napkin stuff, and now this is back of the napkin script writing, just paying homage to it. It feels so alive, which the show doesn't always do.
There's a thing they introduce here, which they've used since, and I think it's a genius move by Davies. Even though it sort of gets him to write around some issues, which is to say, how do you have the Doctor and Jack and Martha still be credibly part of the story if they're now on the run and they have no help? So they got the idea of the perception filter, right? Which I think up until this point has not really been a thing, but it's kind of a masterstroke in terms of plotting, I'll have to say, because one, it explains virtually every episode where the TARDIS has been in ever. And again, it doesn't entirely hold up because obviously people do notice the TARDIS at times when they maybe shouldn't if there's a perception filter. But you can always argue, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Just like a lot of things.
Sometimes the psychic paper doesn't work. Yeah, so it totally makes sense.
It's again one of these things that's Doctor Who science because it's very like more story and concept-y than real science-y, but it makes sense in your head. Oh, I get it. You want to look, but you can't, or as long as you're not really looking directly at it, you can't really see it, which that works. It does. And so
it does work. And it works. It works in part because the camera direction in that scene where the Doctor's, he puts the key on and he says to Martha, now can you see me? And we see from Martha's point of view, the camera pan away from Tennant, which is such an unusual thing for the camera to do when Tennant is on screen, that we feel it.
Well, I'd also like that it's one of these things that's relatively weak, right? Like as soon, like he says a couple of times, the moment we draw attention to ourselves, the spell's broken. So it doesn't let us actually do anything, but we can sort of wander around the background of all this stuff, and
we can be ghosts.
There. Yeah, and it works. The one part where I would say I might question it. It doesn't ruin it at all, but it's like when the president lands and they're on the airfield, you got to think that whole place is littered with SAS and Secret Service, and those guys are deliberately looking for people sneaking around, you would think, right? So it's like, in that sense, I'm like, well, I guess you could say maybe they're not quite on the job, or this is a quick meeting and maybe not so much, but it is a little like, would they really be able to do that short of the vortex manipulation teleporting they do later? I don't know. But again, it's something I kind of sort of thought of. You're definitely not thinking of it in the moment. So it's like, whatever. Go ahead.
Let's talk about the president. Arthur Winters.
President Winters, yes.
President Winters. We all remember President Winters. First of all, this is kind of a bit of a blunder by Davies in the dialogue, unusual for him. He has Winters say that he is president-elect when he's introducing himself to the Toclophane.
It's a detail, but it bothers me too.
Yeah, I don't think that Davies understands what a president-elect is. That is, of course, the title given after you're elected, but before you're inaugurated, in which case you wouldn't be in that position.
I'm so surprised nobody noticed this. And maybe there weren't enough Americans at all involved with the production. That's possible, but it is one of those things. Oh, you're just like, what? Is this between like the first week of November and the 20th? In which case, January 20th, in which case, why is the actual president there?
Exactly.
Again, it's a detail, but it sticks out like a sore thumb every time it's like, that doesn't make sense.
We've talked before on this show about the issue with Doctor Who writing in America. Like we did just talk about how it's always New York or the Western Desert, right? There's a lot of, and this kind of falls into that. But I have to say, I do love Winters as a character. I love, first of all, as a Brit, everyone is cheering this scene in Britain in the same way that they cheered Hugh Grant in Love Actually, right? Where he sticks it to the American president, and there's definitely that sense of like, even though there's the master and he's evil and he's going to destroy all of humankind, he's standing up for Britain. In this moment, holy hell.
Well, it is telling that at the end of the script, they basically, when they reverse time, it's all the way up to just after the president was killed. So it's like, let's make sure we save that, everyone. That's what everyone
Don't worry.
wants to see. It's like,
Exactly.
all right.
Don't worry, the evil president was, and he's not evil, he's just very egotistical.
And he's also like, he's got the pole stuck up his butt because he's got to be played straight to the master's like jokey guy. As a comedy duo, they're great together.
Oh my god, the scene where the master zips up his mouth and then Winter's like, "You're trying my patience, sir." I love it. I love every bit of that comedy duo. And then the whole thing is like,
at one point there's a line about like I could make. I think they're on the Valiant at this point. I could make some scones or something. Or wait a minute, maybe some grits. What are grits?
Oh yeah, grits. What are grits? He's really sticking it to the Americans in the room, and my God, yeah, you can't really do that anymore. And certainly, you can't have a. It would be harder these days for an American president character to tell a British prime minister character, your country is being led by an imbecile or a buffoon or a joke or whatever it is he calls it. That's the ship has sailed on telling us that.
Yeah, he calls him an ass.
Calls him an ass. Okay. Wow,
there you go. Boom. Not often you hear that one, but that's family friendly. Just family friendly enough.
Harsh but true. Yeah.
But then he gets he comes out. The Toclafane ask for the master, and he has this dumb line where he's like, "I'll accept mastery over you if that's what you want, alien things.
If that is your wish, yes." Yeah, what does he think he's doing when he gets up there? I mean, first of all, he says he's having units seize control, and it's he warns Saxon that the United Nations has ways of dethroning him, as it were. Which would love to hear more about that. But then we hear him in an aside saying, "Make sure it's not the UN seal on all of this. On this live broadcast, make sure it's my presidential seal on everything." So yeah. He's talking about ego at both sides. Yeah. Talking about both sides of his mouth.
I like those lines because you kind of need to. I don't know if you need to, but Russell Davies, again, I love him for this. Like, he went out of his way to make sure this fit into what Doctor Who politics is kind of perceived to be. I've never been explicit about it, but we've said sort of many times on the podcast, Doctor Who has this sort of vision of a more powerful UN, clearly, with UNIT and something that's closer to a world government than we have today. Like, not officially, but it is like that's definitely part of the vision of the show. But then
there's also. By the way, speaking of the dud notes of him being president-elect, he's definitely not president-elect because he's flying an Air Force One. But also, there's a brief scene, where the newsreader says, and sources tell us that Air Force One has landed somewhere in the country. Really? Sources tell us? You're running this over video of Air Force One landing in the UK. I think you've got more than a source. Maybe that's... just my thing as a journalist, it's not how sources work. Yeah.
I hope they didn't post that to Twitter because they might have got banned from showing the live real-time location of the plane.
Yes, real-time location of the president. Oh my God, assassination coordinates.
But then there's speaking of assassination coordinates, so the climax is that the president gets vaporized, the master comes out, "Oh, it's me," and it's like, honestly, I'm like one of the best scenes. Climaxes in Doctor Who, where he just comes out and pulls off his plan and wins and has a musical finish that of course is also partially the opening to our show, but it's just that bit where he's like, here come the drums, and the sky opens and all the Toclafane swarm out. Like, it's just like, holy crap. And not only, like, I remember seeing this and thinking like, oh, what are they going to do? And they got, this can't happen. And it's like, he's 1/10 of the population, and they come down, and even Martha, you're still kind of waiting for something to kind of stop them. And then Martha just goes, and you see, like, she's on the outskirts ostensibly of London, and it's like total devastation. And you're just like, what?
I really want to be in the room where it happened, in the CGI company's room. The Mill was the special effects company that I think they used at the time. I really want to be in in the script, when the script lands on their conference room desk and they look through it and they come to a scene that says, and then 6 billion toclophane emerged through a gap in space and time.
Right.
And I just imagine someone like rage quitting at that point. 6 billion? Come on, Russell. Like, we've only just invented CGI. It's 2008. What do you want? It's just brilliant.
I love,
but it works. The CGI
totally
works even now. You genuinely believe that there are 6 billion toclophane.
Oh yeah, it's totally good. I mean, they've already established the toclophane look a little, unreal to a certain extent, especially when he sort of has that line. And you almost think like he never has the line, "I am the master, you will obey me," even though when he earlier says, "I am the master" in the episode, and he holds his hands out like this. I thought he was going to say it, but then he said, "And these are my friends." And I like that because he wasn't as like Davies. You don't have to be gratuitous. You don't have to contort the plot so much that you can get his like signature line. So
he doesn't get the signature line, but he does get the Legopolis line. He says, "People of the Earth, please attend carefully."
Oh yeah, that callback. I almost forgot about that. Yes. Oh my God, there's so much. This episode is so loaded with things. How did I almost forget about that? Yes. Basically, and he just says, "End of the world." Like it doesn't. He's not even like he's. It shows like the sim master. He's still like as power hungry as the alien master, but he's just got this craziness to him that is just full on like fun.
He's like Ainley, but he's funky and he likes to dance to EDM while the end of the world happens. That's the addition. Actually, if you go back and look closely, weirdly, John Sim isn't dancing; it's his wife who's dancing. To Voodoo Child is the name of the track.
She's got in heels, no less, and we haven't talked a lot about the wife, and we'll get to more about her in Last of the Time Lords. But there's kind of enough here in this episode because earlier she's being interviewed by the journalist, which again is a good sort of moment, which actually, even though it's sort of directly attacking it in some way, it actually bolsters the plot itself of like how the master was able to establish himself, even though he's only been there 18 months, because there are already chinks in his armor starting to appear, right? Like a few people have noticed that, wait a minute, he actually didn't exist before 18 months ago. And so I like that scene first as a thing that bolsters the overall story and starts to set up, how he can possibly be defeated. But then it establishes his wife and what her character is all about. Really, really well.
It establishes so much. I mean, we talked about the cabinet scene that precedes this kind of doing double duty. I think the scene with the master's wife and the journalist does triple duty. First of all, establishes that, yes, some people know. Secondly, the master's wife has made her choice. She's allied with him, and that slowly emerges through the scene. But also later on, you discover that the journalist was working with Torchwood. You get that video message of, if I'm dead, this means that it's happened. So that advances the plot as well. So incredible economy of plot. Just genius stuff. And exactly why I say that RTD's at the top of his game here.
Yeah. And just fast forwarding again to the end of the show where the whole climax happens, the laser screwdriver. Boom. Like I it's a detail, but I like it, and he barely uses it in the whole thing, but it's more of a meta comment than anything else. But I also like that it's we've seen shrinking people. He's done that, and it wouldn't really
tissue
add a
compression
lot to this.
So old school.
Yeah, and I like the idea, like as the ideological opposite in a lot of ways to the Doctor, he's got basically the same tool except it's a weapon. He could zap people with it and hurt them.
And he has that great line, which I had actually added some extra John Sim craziness in my head to the line over the years, where I always thought he said, "Laser screwdriver, who'd have Sonic?" Like he just kind of goes over the top with kind of like rubbing it in your face. Who'd have Sonic? Sonic's so old fashioned. He doesn't. He actually plays it pretty understated. I just added that stuff in my own headcanon of the way that he said that. It's just like, it's more like laser screwdriver. Who'd have Sonic?
It's because the whole idea is just needling the Doctor. Like even your tools are useless, man. You're just so lame. It's kind of like the scene in Spaceballs. I've referenced Spaceballs before in the podcast, where it's like, oh yeah, you fell for that too. I'm throwing your little lightsaber into the grill. Ah, ha, ha, ha. Yeah, you guys are dumb. Evil always triumphs because good is dumb.
Basically
that kind of relishing. I'm better than you, which is again what the master is all about here. That's what he wants to do. That's his vision. It's not so much I want power. I want to be proved right. I want everyone to know I was the smartest person in the room.
I want to be better than the Doctor. That is the Master's entire thing. It's Missy's entire thing. Like, I just people who don't understand the Master, they have issues with Master stories. Remember that is the underlying motivation at all times. Why he always keeps the Doctor alive. He just wants to prove to the Doctor that he or she is better, is superior.
Exactly.
And it's perfect.
Yeah, it's much better. And it's a great segue to Last of the Time Lords, which we've already sort of talked about quite a bit over at the top, because how this all turns out and the snapshot it gives of the Master and his psychology and his vision of winning is ultimately what this is about. And man, does it deliver in droves in the next episode. Again, you're left in the Sound of Drums with the decimation, and to kind of like go right to 1 year later, you're like, holy cow, like, okay. And then being presented with this super dark version of the planet. Like, not only has the Master taken over, the Toclafane are essentially allowed to run wild and kill and torture whoever they want. The island of Japan apparently was completely destroyed, like essentially a genocide of scale that no one's ever seen. Vast swaths of the entire planet are now just shipyards to create, with slave labor. This is it. This is like, wow. Like, it's not just, again, I love this vision of the Masters winning, because he's crazy, but he's not totally, like, he has a method to it. And one thing we haven't touched on a lot, we talked a lot about it at the beginning, is his vision, not just of, I want to rule the cosmos, I want to bring back Gallifrey. That's interesting. And it's even more, it justifies this whole thing about proving the Doctor he's better than the Doctor, because this is what the Doctor cares about too, and he's kind of like, I love that bit, it's at the end of the humiliation scene, and luckily it's retained. He's talking to the Doctor through the porthole. Look, I'm winning. Like, look, this is all the stuff. It's good. We're going to build a new Gallifrey. Isn't it good? Isn't it good? Look what I've done. I've done what you couldn't do. I'm bringing back Gallifrey. Isn't it good? Looking for that approval. Oh,
it is so interesting. This is obviously the first time watching this for me. Well, maybe not obviously, but first time watching this for me since Spyfall. So since we know that the Master has gone ahead and destroyed Gallifrey again, and we've talked a number of times about this on the show about how that just kind of came out of nowhere. This actually helps. I think this establishes the Master's character, establishes that he's crazy enough to do something, that he hates Gallifrey almost as much as he hates the Doctor, or hates Gallifrey more than the Doctor. He believes that Gallifrey itself is just wrong, and its whole focus is the idea that it's doing good in the universe. He doesn't believe that. Doctor doesn't really believe that either, but he kind of hangs with it, right? He's not going to go and destroy the Time Lords. But yeah, here's the Master trying to rebuild Gallifrey from the ground up on Earth.
Yeah.
With the Toclafane, which is fascinating. And I'd totally forgotten that was his goal. So it's not just that he always has to set himself in opposition to the Doctor to prove that he's better than the Doctor. It's that he has to prove that Gallifrey was just like basically built on a lie. That Gallifrey, the Time Lords were all liars, and just, they were,
he's not wrong.
Totally. He's not wrong. Yeah, he has a good point. He has a good point underneath all of that, and we'll see that more in the end of time, right?
I think we'd all still prefer that version of Gallifrey to whatever the Master has in mind here, given the choice. Yes. But yeah, I mean, like, there's a cynical lie, and this is the thing about people who are driven to this or maddened in doing things like this. There's some understandable part of it. Again, doesn't mean they're right about what they're trying to do, but it is like. And they're always also trying to sort of make them seem like the same as everybody else, right? And we've seen this before with the Master, where it's actually a good line in the Pertwee era, where the Doctor accuses him of being mad and paranoid. And it's a great Delgado line where he says, "Why not? The difference is I'm just a little more honest than the rest." And that's such a common thing among the evil among us. I think that they want to believe that everyone's really the same.
Exactly,
really,
cynicism.
Even though they often have a point, it's like we're not the same. No, and that's ultimately like what happens at the end, right? When the Doctor finally pulls out of it, and the epic line like that we've all been waiting for, because they tease it in that opening scene. I have one thing to say to you, and he hugs him and he just says, "I forgive you," and it's like, it just gets you. You're like, wow.
Which a lot of people didn't like that at the time, I guess, because they themselves are pretty cynical. But that, again, this has always been the way that the Doctor has approached the Master. The Doctor's never wanted the Master to die. He's always cared about the Master. He's always wanted to
Planet of Fire
in his own way.
A little bit there.
Well, he just, but he's also kind of let Chameleon die at that point, so I guess he's on a roll. But Davison's Doctor, he's darker than you think. The Doctor always wants to save him. This is his most overt thing. It does. People sort of criticize him as like the Jesus Doctor in this moment, because he's rising again, and he's glowing, and he's literally walking on air, and then he does the forgiveness thing. So
but I don't think that's
needlessly
bad.
Messianic. I don't know.
I mean,
but no, I agree with you. I think
that's okay. I mean, like, the thing is, whatever your religion is, the themes of forgiveness, I think, are important. And the themes, I think this is a universal thing, religious or not, like loving your enemy. It's the hardest thing to do. Like, it is so hard, but it is so necessary. And I wouldn't even say personally I've been super like we all have challenged, right, by like things that challenge us in life. But I think most universally we look at like you need to forgive for yourself to move on and really grow. I mean, it's important, and that's ultimately like the message here, and it's done in such a smart way within the relationship between these two characters that's really been building since Terror of the Autons, right? And which is why this is so epic. It's not just reintroducing the Master, it's kind of in a lot of ways resolving that relationship. And I think he was full on entitled to kill him off and not bring him back. And they've done interesting things. I love Missy. I love all the things they did with Capaldi, and even bringing back Sim for that one episode. There's more to do, and I'm glad they did it. But this whole thing where they brought him back and then explored these themes really showed the psychology and of the Master and the relationship with the Doctor, and then ending it. It's all here. It's all here. Beginning, middle, and end.
It is.
It's great.
It's the ultimate Master trilogy, and it's well to describe it like that, because that's really what it feels like. It also means that this does require you to hit the reset button, because the idea that the Master might have killed hundreds of millions of people.
Yes.
And then have the Doctor, it's a bit sort of like, it's forgiving Space Hitler, there have to be certain lines in Forgive Your Enemy. But if we're hitting the reset button, it's fine.
I do love that. And this is the thing. If I do have an issue with this, there's a reset button that's hit, and reset buttons in general are bad. I wouldn't say this is that bad, because the thing that lets them get away with it is that the people in the eye of the storm remember, and not just the Doctor. Like, really, really great dramatic moment when Martha's mom still wants to kill him, and played
her
really
dad,
well.
I think, as well.
Because she's amazing in that moment. Francine,
all of Martha's family.
Francine Jones, Adjoa Ando. So. Yeah.
Yes.
Really, really great performance. Like, she's crying. She's got the gun. The Doctor's trying to talk her out of it, but it's like, you're right there with her. Like, we've just heard that Japan was not just decimated, like, it was completely destroyed, which is over 100 million people right there. like, no, like, yes, let's ensure this never happens again. And this guy did it, so let's execute him. I mean, no one's going to question that.
Yeah, especially if you've been working for him for a year.
Yeah.
You know, he's the worst boss ever.
Yeah.
And really, just you would totally shoot him. I thought you were going to say, you know, talk about the paradox engine of the TARDIS as you'll get out of jail free on the reset button, because that's my thinking, is that they sort of introduce this notion that the TARDIS is sustaining the paradox here. They explain that it's a grandfather paradox. Google it. But they also say that it's the TARDIS that is, and I love that idea of, like, you know, and RTD does this a lot. He's like, I am fully admitting the flaws in my script. I am putting them front and center. The flaws are there. They are naked. They have opened the trench coat. Sorry, folks. They, you know, everything's out there to see, but it's okay because we have this vastly powerful time machine with basically, you know, a black hole inside of it. That's powerful enough to do anything that you want it to. If you chain it up and you know, connect it right, you could sustain a paradox like that. Like, does that really bear to be thought about? Does it hold up under scrutiny? Can you sustain a paradox that way? How does it work? Yeah, you probably can't. You probably can't. Like, you could maybe. It's a really confusing one to headcanon. But it doesn't matter because we blow right past it, right? So I like the idea that the reset button is just detaching the paradox machine, and like everything goes back to normal. It feels like it's been flagged enough.
If there's a weak spot here in the plot, I think it is the TARDIS. So I have to headcanon this a little bit, and I will say I wish they had put in one line of throwaway dialogue about this. Well, a couple things. One, the Doctor wrecks the TARDIS, so it only goes back to the 2 time zones. But we also know at the end of this, it's going to get fixed again. So it is fixable. So why couldn't the Master fix it? That's never really explained. Like, is there a component or something that can only be found on Gallifrey or whatever? And if so, then like what? Like, did the Doctor have an extra one stashed on either in the TARDIS or on Earth somewhere? They should have had some throwaway in that. But the other thing that I think they should have said was that at some point, when the Master executes on his plan and starts taking over swaths of the cosmos, in other words, I think the paradox should have taken on a life of its own. In other words, like, he wouldn't need the TARDIS anymore at some point. You know, certainly once he reestablishes Gallifrey and does some kind of other extra R of harmony. Like, in other words, like, his long-term plan will be permanent if he's allowed to go further, right? Like, and then that if the TARDIS is then destroyed, dismantled at that point, well, he'll just have built a bunch of paradox engines all over the cosmos to ensure that this keeps going. So maybe that's implied. I mean, maybe I don't even really need to headcanon it that much, but I think that because otherwise there's so much dependent on the TARDIS, you know, like, and him holding it and making sure this happens. You would think there would be even more defenses that he would have established around it, because it is so vital to his plan working.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's. I also like it. I'll mention as a kind of a meta reference on the show itself, because there are a lot of those. Yeah. You know, the idea that we all sustain the Doctor, but also that the TARDIS is Doctor Who's the show's get out of jail free card.
Yeah,
it can sustain any paradox because it's a time machine. It can just do it. It's a super powerful time machine. It can be used to fill any plot hole that you need. It is the it's the ultimate Clara Splinter, the way we use the Clara Splinter in the show.
Yeah, it can be a bit overused, certainly in that sense. But here, I think it's fine. It's a bit of a weak spot, but not overly weak. Nothing contorts around it. Be under the weight of what the Master is trying to do here. Hey, let's talk again about the Master's wife, Lucy.
Yes,
and
Lucy.
A couple of things I want to explore. First is the bruise, which we touched on a bit earlier, and again, this is a masterpiece episode. I really like it. I thought the bruise was a step too far. I got to be honest with you, even though obviously the implication is that the Master is also a wife beater. Yes. And the Master's in my view, he's hateful enough for all the things he's done, the humiliation he's putting people through, the genocide he's clearly already done. To add that to it, yes, it gives her more motivation at the end, I guess. But I also feel like that cheapens her character. Like, surely you didn't want Japan destroyed and like hundreds of millions of people like murdered. Like, is that not horrific enough for you? Also,
Yeah.
I think it's not in keeping with the character. He's never really been like, I'll be like needlessly violent. Yes, he's violent. Yes, he's cold. Yes, he relishes his killings and even holds trophies with the tissue compression eliminator. But does he go around smacking people, beating people? I'm sure if we went through all the episodes, there's probably been a moment, but it doesn't feel right to me. I don't know. What did you think?
I think it felt of a piece with the feel of the whole story, which feels very sort of classic movie, classic sci-fi to me. Like, everything is the plot is in something. The rockets feel very 1950s when you see them, right? So it just sort of feels. It read to me like a kind of a classic movie moment where you would just sort of casually throw in that kind of, gangster beating his mole kind of thing, where it wasn't taken as seriously, so you could more easily use it as a plot point to establish the evil of a particular character. So that's what read to me. I don't think you could do it today.
Oh yeah,
I think that
it's a little too sensitive.
I think it's a little too sensitive, but also I think the overall feel of this, like it's sort of like the last 2008, kind of the last time you could do kind of this science fiction caper. The way that this is a caper, it really feels like there's so many elements from classic movies, not just the direct thefts that I've talked about, but also just like it feels like a sort of rollicking action adventure comedy from this comedy tragedy from the 60s, maybe. Just it has that Batman 66-ish vibe to it. So yeah, that's what I read The Bruise in the context of.
Yeah,
and I think even RTD would write it differently today.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. So let's touch on something. Let's actually explore something that obviously has been a big target of criticism in this episode, which is what is, I think, come to be known as the Dobby Doctor.
Yes.
The Master ages him, suspends the Doctor's ability to regenerate, ages him hundreds of years beyond which his body should not be able to sustain, I guess, is the implication. And essentially he shrinks into this little kind of dwarf-like thing, almost like Andy Serkis in The Lord of the Rings, right? And the Gollum and stuff. And he's then sort of caged as this thing. It's clearly like a CGI thing. Was it necessary? Is it a bridge too far in terms of special effects and us trying to take this seriously? I wasn't bothered by it. I think you got to do something after that sort of interesting escape attempt they sort of tried to do early on, and he wants to punish him even further. So what does he do? He does this. I think it was fine. I think maybe if you did it today, you just do somewhat more like realistic effects. And I think it'd be fine. But
you would, yeah. It is. I mean, the eyes are, I think, the problem here, that they sort of give him these sad Dobby eyes. The idea itself, I don't think, is problematic at all. This is 2008, right? If I'm correct. Also, the year that Benjamin Button came out.
Interesting. Okay.
Which has, I think, very similar CGI, right? And he starts off old and gets younger. He's not quite this sort of small and shrunken, but it definitely gave me Benjamin Button vibes. I liked it because I was so sort of, scared in a childlike sense, as I mentioned, by the Doctor overaging in the first place. Like, I do think that it is to up the ante on that and to really hurt our hero even more, and then to take him from a dog tent to a bird cage. I think that's actually brilliant. That part is brilliant. I see the Dobby connection. I think that I think the design should have been made differently. I don't think that you needed the eyes. I think it's actually more effective if, like the old age makeup that they've got Tennant in, he kind of just like his eyes don't really pop out of it. He just kind of looks grumpy and old and sad, and that is more effective than giving him the big wide open eyes. I think you just need a smaller version of that, right? Even more aged and wrinkled and horrible and just gross. So it doesn't. I can see the issue. I can see what people call it the Dobby Doctor. I think in context it didn't bother me too much because I'm so in the story at that point.
Exactly. I think it depends on how willing you are to go with it, and whether it takes you out of the story. But I will admit, like, it is a thing that I could see why someone might be taking a little bit out of the story there. And with, whatever standards you have, you might say it ruins the episode or whatever, but I was completely fine with it. So let's talk about the resolution to the story, which I think works really well. I thought it worked amazingly in the moment. I remember when I first saw it, it's like, oh, of course, the satellites. And I like the whole thing where there's the mislead of the Time Lord killing chemicals or whatever it is. And I love and it's so played well by John Sim and Freema Agyeman, who have that great, Martha and the Master have this great bit of dialogue where she's kind of laughing, and he's constantly trying to one up her in the way, because like, I'm still smarter than you. I'm still like, he's such a nya guy. Like, it's
right, and that's exactly how you deal with a bully. You laugh them off. You laugh at them.
Yeah,
you smirk.
He's kind of like, so nothing will happen, and then suddenly, like, then they'd mention the satellite network, and it's like, oh, and then and suddenly it dawns on both the viewers and the Master that, oh wait, I may have just overlooked the rook in the corner that's going to checkmate me. And of course they do. And the Doctor comes out of it. Here's the thing. Like, I guess upon reflection, would not the Master have gotten wind of this, right? That the Doctor's telling everyone this story and that they should all think about the Doctor at a certain time and thought about that? I don't know. Like, I do think that because she's ostensibly going after this gun, right, that unit builds that can kill Time Lords.
That's the cover story.
Like, you're looking over here when, hey, you really should be looking over here. So no one, including the Master, even cares about the story she's telling, and they're all just focused on the gun. You have to really believe that. And even
I do believe it, because I can believe that the Master would not think that was important. He might even have gotten some intelligence that she's telling people to think of the Doctor, and you can imagine him kind of dismissing it. What's that going to do?
Right.
And he hasn't put two and two together. The Archangel network, and it's still not exactly clear. Like, I'm not 100% on exactly how has the Doctor tapped into the Archangel network with his mind. Was he using the laser screwdriver? Was that part of it? I don't understand.
Again, it's Doctor Who science, but I think the main thing is that there's a telepathic aspect to the network that is hypnotic, right? And that's why everyone's sort of been fooled into thinking Harold Saxon's a real guy and we should trust him. But the Doctor is sort of, because he's part telepathic, can, think about how he can sort of use this network to his advantage. And not only do that, but I mean, again, Doctor Who science, physically recover himself with the energies that will be generated by all this positive psychic energy he gets, right? And even be, he even manages to shield himself from the laser screwdriver and all of this.
Right.
So that works for me. Like, I never had a problem with that.
If only he hadn't floated. I think that's sort of the biggest problem with that scene, is that he also gets floating powers. Which,
I mean,
that's a bit much.
In my view, he briefly becomes like not just a Time Lord, but like superhuman, and it basically becomes a superhero for a few minutes based on all this energy he was able to harness. So that's pretty cool. I kind of wouldn't mind seeing it again at some point. Like that. Again, I think you can't do it all the time, but I do like this idea of with enough people believing in you, like, it's just a good message. Like, you just take on superhuman powers.
it's a great message. It's the ultimate meta message of the Doctor, and one that Moffat returns to over and over again.
True.
This idea of the Doctor as an idea. And that is indeed what brings the Doctor back at the end of Pandorica Opens, right? It's the fact that, and he actually says it, we're all stories in the end, just make it a good one, eh? Right?
Yeah.
If you can remember me, I'll come back. And the Doctor, it gets this notion that the Doctor is actually real because he exists in millions of heads around the world. And we actually, as another reason why the Brandon Braza brought us here, I think, because we got to that in Blink, that notion that, the Doctor is a voice on a television talking to you, helping you. Also another meta reference for how he affects our lives. So I like that aspect of it. I don't think you needed CGI. I would love to see a version where Tennant just gets up as Tennant
and walks over.
And walks
Still
over
be immune
on
to the
his
laser
sand
screwdriver.
shoes. Exactly. It can, Oops, I'm wearing sand shoes. He just walks over because that would just feel more Doctor-like, that he wouldn't float. He just walk over there.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's
that's
just
fair.
a guy.
And you get less of the messianic kind of like
yes,
accusations.
exactly.
Don't really need them. So before we get to the 4 questions, the last thing I think that we need to talk about is what I would argue might be the most gut-wrenching and affecting death scene in Doctor Who, where the Master dies in his arms.
And refuses to regenerate.
It kills it. Yeah, it's not just he's been wounded. He's consciously doing it to get at the Doctor, and he has that great final line. Well, it's actually not his final line because he asks about the drums, but he's like, "How about that? I win." It was so good.
Such an incredible kind of Pyrrhic victory there for the Master, but so fitting for the character to have him do that. I love it. I love that he's sort of like putting this effort into not regenerating, that you would have to do that. And it reminds me of Twice Upon a Time, that whole "I will not change." The Doctor himself kind of shows that you can do that. You can resist regeneration and just die. And that's the result. So it's wonderful for the show's canon going forward. But also it's just so perfect. And it's almost sad that this isn't the Master's final end, because that's such a perfect way for him to go out in the Doctor's arms, refusing to regenerate just to get back at him.
And can we give a shout out to Murray Gold for a minute? I mean, wow, did he deliver the goods here? Like, This Is Gallifrey is one of the absolute best pieces of music that they've done in this whole show. And the way it's played so sort of majestically in The Sound of Drums, when the Doctor's recounting to Martha and Jack about how wonderful Gallifrey is. Also adding a good bit of canon there, like he talks about the continent of wild endeavor and these, it's in these mountains. I forget the names of the mountains.
We get more Gallifreyan geography, which is always fun.
And he says explicitly, and again, it's the Doctor, so who really knows? But he says explicitly, the oldest race in the cosmos, like the oldest race in all time.
Really?
Is it? Maybe, I don't know. But I always thought, kind of, because surely the oldest race would be also the first one to master time travel, but then kind of be jerks about it, right? And like police time travel and make sure no one else gets it and has that same power. And of course the Daleks sort of bypass that at some point. But but anyway, there's just so much there, and you kind of sort of finally see these visuals of the capital, the Citadel, and exterior Gallifrey, CG certainly, but good CG, and a shot of a Time Lord and the old headdress and everything. First time in the series you see that.
First time in the new series, you see the Master as a child, which first of all, fantastic. That and the kid they've got, it's just perfect.
Yeah.
But he's wearing the Time Lord costume from War Games.
Right.
That
Yes.
bit.
That's genius
So that,
detail. Genius detail.
yes, that
Yeah.
gets into the notion of there being 2 Time Lord costumes in the series, and they didn't have the, the budget to do the headdress stuff or anything fancy at all for War Games, right? So
Yeah.
let's just throw it in that this is just a kind of a junior Time Lord outfit.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
No, I
Absolutely
love
brilliant.
that. And then in this final scene, they bring it back, that sort of the guitar riff, I guess it is, where, just as
Mhm.
the master has died, and Tennant, my God, like delivers the goods here. Like his anguish and just
Yeah.
that scream he does, like so real.
Regenerate!
Yeah, and then he,
Regenerate!
he he holds him super close, and he's rocking in total anguish, and he just
Mm.
screams. He's just like, because he was the last, and then he wasn't. And not only was he not the last, it was someone who used to be
Mm.
his friend, and
Mhm.
as we've come to believe, I guess, I mean, his best friend from his childhood.
Yeah, yeah.
And now he's alone again, and you're just feeling all of that. Not only does he, and you also really believe it when he says, like, I'm going to stop wandering, like I have a responsibility. And
Yeah.
he was ready, like basically he was ready to kind of walk down the aisle with the master here.
I
And
love it. And the master is just like, "Oh, doctor, you're so exhausting. I'd rather kill myself." Which is so
Basically,
perfect.
yeah.
He's like, rather than go on a long road trip with you, I'm just gonna die. I mean, talk about a rejection. Holy crap.
Well, and what's so great is that the good stuff they did with the master subsequent to this, we see that, right? Like, to the extent that Capaldi was the 12th Doctor was watching Missy and taking that responsibility that he talks about here. Like, I'm going to stop my wandering, and now I have a purpose. And he eventually delivers on that promise, which is so good. And this is a really good example. Again, maybe I do love to heap on Chris Chibnall. I'm sorry for Chris. I'm sure you're a great guy. But the thing is, that whole idea of Moffat and the showrunner taking over and doing yes and,
Yeah.
like in that, like, yes, all this happened with the master, and you didn't get that with again, nothing against Shasha Dhawan and his amazing performance and the stuff they've done with him. I think a lot of that was really good. But the idea that they did all this cool stuff between Missy and the John Sim Master and everything they did in the Dr. Falls, and then just forget about it. Then it's just, no, we're just going to reboot and with no explanation. It's like, come on, there was so much there. And that's not like, hopefully someone, Davies maybe picks up that baton. I don't know. Maybe he'll do something entirely different. But really well done the way they sort of picked up where this left off later with Missy.
Agreed. Want to give a few shout outs before we get to the 4 questions. First of all, shout out to the group Chameleon Circuit. Not sure you're familiar with that. You can look them up on Spotify. They do a song called "The Sound of Drums," which is all about this episode, and it has the singer in it basically repeats that Tennant speech towards the end of the song. Brilliant use. It's just regenerate. So it is one of those scenes that really works very effectively, even set to music. Also, want to give a shout out to RTD because it's something we haven't mentioned yet. I think looking back on this, you really realize how much technobabble RTD does. Like, he loves his technobabble, and he can do it like no one else. It is throughout Utopia. Like, it's pretty much Derek Jacobi. Like, kind of why you had to get an actor of his caliber to do Professor Yana and in that role as well, right? Because there's like 15 long lines full of technobabble. But yeah, it's Star Trek worthy stuff. I really like that. And yeah, I just want to say that this another brilliant RTD thing, the scene where he gets real British celebrities to endorse Harold Saxon, Sharon Osbourne, a boy band called McFly, which they didn't last, but they were a real band, and Anne Widdecombe, who is a horrible right winger, and getting her to support Harold Saxon, I think, masterstroke, so to speak. Just brilliant. And again, the sound of drums, the finger tapping, the fact that both Martha and Jack are like, yeah, I really wanted to vote for him. I don't know why.
Right.
And I think if you're watching that at the time, you're thinking Tony Blair. Right? A character just sort of comes along, kind of wins through his charisma. You know, people are like, what are his policy positions? I don't care. He's just so charismatic. These days, you might think of Trump, but, you know, we can be fair to both sides of the political aisle and say it's happened more or less on both sides.
Yeah,
Cult of personality doesn't recognize any political divide.
For sure.
Brilliant stuff. And the fact that this is all squeezed in. And the floating air carrier, I believe this precedes the one that's in the Avengers.
Yes, but not in science fiction. And the Avengers one, to be fair, was in the comics well before all of this. So floating air carriers, it's kind of like Zeppelin's signaling that you're in an alternate timeline, right? It's like I'm willing to forget it's a trope, but it is like let's see the trope. I mean, this is at a point in sci-fi television where, you know, it's still kind of early days in terms of modern effects, so this might be one of the first times it's actually shown in sort of a modern storytelling kind of way. So points for that.
Well, like it's much more British. I love the sort of the triangular landing strip thing that it's got going on.
Yeah,
it's basically three landing strips. Awesome design. Just feels much more British than the Avengers version.
Well, also glad they didn't forget about it. Like they use it later, and I'm not sure if I don't know if it was after the it was the Sontaran stratagem where they brought it back. But yeah, it'd be interesting. Where did they park that thing after the unit was defunded? I wonder. Just leave it to float. Just tether it to the moon or something. I don't know. So I know we've been already going for a while. Hey, it's a 3-episoder, guys. We were going to go for a while, but the should we spend just a minute or two on the denouement, like the multiple of them, like the resolution? So they resolve Martha as a companion. She says goodbye, ostensibly because her family's traumatized. She needs to stay with them. But then she turns around and goes in and sort of gives almost a second leaving scene that's more about her. And like, obviously she's been in love with the doctor, and she tells him, I'm getting out of this. And, you know, doesn't necessarily judge it.
The doctor is such a tool in that, and the way that we've been in this adventure. We have seen the Whittaker episode, The Witchfinders, where we talked about how the way that Ryan rejects King James I at the end in that was a brilliant way to do it. He's like, I'm going to keep my eye on you. Do something nice like that leaves James smiling and not losing face. Like the doctor could have given Martha a gift.
Yeah, instead she does it, right? She's like, gives him her phone and is like, I'm going to call that. And it's like, okay, like,
it's just like, yeah, I guess.
I got
what was your name again?
Go ahead. Here you go, Martha. Here's my hand. No.
There you go, Rose. I mean, Martha. I got you this, Rose. Martha. I mean, just such a dick.
Yeah, so there was that. And then, of course, there is the final bit where he pulls off the handbrake and smashes right into the Titanic, which...
Yeah.
Again, I feel like this is Davies kind of writing himself into a corner deliberately. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. You might know more from having read the writer's tale, whether he did. We'll get to Voyage of the Damned when we get to it, but I want to get my dig in now where I'm like, okay, fair enough. The TARDIS just got smashed by a ship. I remember at the time thinking it was the actual Titanic, because if you think about the life preserver that he sees, I guess you could argue they were just trying to be authentic. What does that have to do with being in space, right? But what I really don't like is like the first 30 seconds or so of Voyage of the Damned, he just reverses it, which is like, well, if you could do that with anything that breaks the TARDIS, why didn't you do that in Terminus or whatever? Like you just rewound by a minute. Okay, I guess.
Davies is he's kind of pushing his luck with all of the cliffhangers here, because they're all brilliant as cliffhangers. They do the job of making you desperately want to watch the next episode. And I did actually mention this in the Blink podcast. We talked about I watched Blink with some friends in 2008, and they loved it so much. I was like, hey, you should watch this next thing called Utopia. And finally, it's like 2 a.m, and we've watched them all because you cannot stop. You cannot stop at the end of Utopia, and you cannot stop at the end of Sound of Drums, because they are 2 of the best cliffhangers in the entire series. Now, Davies is a cliffhanger master. He really is. Did you see the series Years and Years?
No, I didn't.
No, it's well worth it. It's spinning politics forward. The cliffhanger. I'll just spoil this part. The cliffhanger at the end of episode 1 is that the Chinese launch a nuclear. Oh no, it's actually Trump launches a nuclear missile at a Chinese island. An island they built in the South China Sea, which is actually a real thing, that they're building just sort of islands where there were no islands before. Trump launches a nuke. It's seen through the eyes of this family in Manchester. Everyone's going crazy, because the sirens are going. Everyone thinks this is it. This is nuclear war. This is the end of the world. And there's a wonderful moment. It just cuts right at the end to the grandmother of the family, who's just saying, "What happens next? Do you hear me? What happens next?" And that to me is sort of the quintessential RTD cliffhanger, because you always want to know what happens next. Like, and he builds it up
like
at
the most meta cliffhanger I've ever heard of.
Right. And the problem is, it sort of cuts to at the beginning of episode 2. It's like, the next day they're just sort of sweeping up broken glass, and you hear through incidental dialogue that like there weren't any more nuclear attacks, and it just was that one thing, and it's over. Right. Yeah. So there's a little bit of a letdown, and you can kind of feel that here. The Utopia cliffhanger is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, because it's just it's building layer upon layer. Oh my god, it's the Master. Oh my god, the Master's got the TARDIS. Oh my god, the future kind are breaking in. How are they going to get out of this one? Absolutely have to find out. And then the way that they get out is a bit sort of okay. With one bound, they were free.
I agree. They could have been more done there. I also understand what he was kind of faced with. Not necessarily that he was trying to be deliberately bad with the cliffhanger, but also that the Sound of Drums is so different from Utopia in terms of what it's about, its focus. I understand the dilemma there, because if you spend too much time on resolving that cliffhanger, it's not really part of the story. That story is about the Master being prime minister and all this sort of pot boiling plot to get to the end on the Valiant, right? So I think at this point in Doctor Who, and I would argue television, episodic television, where you really can't assume too much on the part of people keeping up week after week. I think you really kind of need to, both from a tonal aspect and a sort of realities of TV aspect, just cut to the next thing. I think today would be different. I think today you have way more license to do that, with people sort of following things, being able to rewind, especially if you're watching on a streaming service. You're I think we're going to get better, satisfying resolutions of those kind of dilemmas. So because those dilemmas simply won't exist, really, because it'll be like, well, you can just pick it up.
It's still a fabulous cliffhanger. But so I think the Titanic is just an example of, like, he was perhaps a little too kind of self-satisfied in his ability to write a cliffhanger that he could just write his way out of.
Yeah. And then he just did, but in the most unsatisfying way. Speaking of satisfying resolution, satisfying answers to things, we have to cut now, finally, dear listeners, to the 4 questions to Doomsday. All right.
He will answer 4 times. Yes.
Question 1. Why did the randomizer take us here? Why did the randomizer take us here, Chris?
Well, I've already mentioned your desire for a Christmas episode, and randomizer's like, "Oh, how about we split the difference and you get a little bit of Voyage of the Damned?" But it's also, I think I've mentioned this, as a wonderful contrast with Zygon Invasion Inversion. It's similar plot line in which the evil plot succeeds, but this just has much more energy. It feels bigger. It's not just revolving around a single speech. And I will say that this is how you ponce about in a big plane.
Yes, this is definitely punching around. That is, 100% on that one. Yeah, I think you keyed it on my thoughts here, which is that. Well, apart from the randomizer just wanting to keep us frustratingly busy in the Christmas season by watching a 3-episoder, which is super annoying. I mean, I loved watching this with my kids and it was really good to revisit, but it is like taking the time to watch the show and do the podcast at a time when I've also tried to balance my kids' schedules and holiday parties and all this stuff.
It's a lot.
It was tough. So here I'm just like, again, teasing them to give us, teasing the randomizer to give us either the War Games or the Daleks Master Plan.
Yeah, here it comes.
I think the connection with the Zygon stuff is this idea of the evil plot succeeding and having a vision of what that is. And here there is a vision, right? Like they show you this is the master succeeding. And in the Zygon one, it's the whole idea of that is it makes you think about it and makes the characters think about it. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. And so if you're sane, which I think we can sort of take from the resolution of that show, you'll pull back from that vision. You'll be like, wait a minute, that's evil for that plot to succeed.
Right.
And there's no good way it succeeds for me or anyone. So I'm a sane person. I'm not going to do it. Whereas here, there's an insane person doing it. And so there's evil at work. Right. So I think that's sort of the connection I made between the two.
I will say also that the randomizer clearly loves the master, loves Missy, loves master reveals. And also, I think we may have completed a bingo. We were talking about almost completing Zygon bingo. Maybe, and we may have also had Osgood bingo. I think we may have just had Axons bingo.
Oh,
because
yes, they're mentioned.
We did Claws of Axos, and they are mentioned twice when the Master and the Doctor are talking about stuff they did together. They throw in the Axons. There are 2 shout-outs. I don't think the Axons are mentioned ever again in any other Who story, are they? Are they mentioned again in the Pertwee era?
I can't remember, but folks, write in. Let us know. Tweet at us.
So if you had Axon bingo, if you had complete all Axon stories where Axons are mentioned in Doctor Who, I think you may just have a bingo. So take a sip of Christmas cheer. You've deserved it.
Well, that is a plot that has succeeded. If
Indeed.
we have done, which hey, we should talk about what if the evil. Well, this is didn't pause for drama. What if the evil plot had succeeded?
Yeah, well, it's difficult with this one because it did, and the question is, could it have succeeded more?
Well, here's my take on this, if you don't mind me going for it. I don't think so. Like, I even though there's clearly a vision for the Master sort of to rule the cosmos here, I don't think I think the lesson here is it could never happen. There is no way for his evil plot to succeed because he's always, always, always going to leave an opening for the Doctor to defeat him because the Doctor is the most important person in his life. He has to prove he's smarter and better. And there's simply no way for the Master to ever really win. And honestly, if you see in the timeline of the Master, this is a bit of a turning point, I think, in his/her plots, because you think about Missy and how
most of her plots are just trying to attract the Doctor's attention.
Yeah, so exactly, Dark Water, Death in Heaven, which we've done for the podcast. Like, I actually like the twist at the end there, where she's like, "This is for you. Here's your cyber army."
It's all a gift. Here you go.
Yeah. And I thought that was, again, it's another sort of yes and from this, where it's like, oh, is the Master really going back to these things where they just want to rule the cosmos? It's like, no, they're more self-aware. She's like, you're the man, Doctor. So here you go. And it's another different way of sort of trying to prove that they're the same, but that's how it is. So
I think you've got it exactly right. I think the Master always sows the seeds of his own destruction. I think that's sort of inherent in the character and is always trying to show off for the Doctor. And it actually makes me realize that, this is sort of partly why you can explain why the Master becomes a jerk, starts to abuse his wife, is because things are going his way. He's got everything he wants, and he's still not satisfied. Yes, the more he wins, the less satisfied he gets. And that seems to be an essential point that is just sort of going to stop this evil plot in its tracks sooner or later.
I like that. I like that analysis. It makes me feel a little better about the bruise, even though no one should ever feel good about a bruise like that. But I mean, in terms of the storytelling, of course, it
gives it a reason.
Make more sense.
Yeah, it's frustration. His love for the Doctor is so he just suddenly hates everyone else. If he's got the Doctor where he wants him, there's no more fun.
Indeed. All right. Speaking of locating people, we need to locate someone named Clara Oswald, because she was splintered in time after the events of the time of the Doctor. No, sorry, the name of the Doctor. I always said there's so many different episodes with the Doctor's name, or the Doctor in those episodes. Anyway, we need to find out. Where
you mentioned the time of the Doctor, by the way. This is the other story in which the Doctor prematurely ages, or not even prematurely.
I thought, where is the Clara?
Where is she?
Where is she?
Yes, where is she? Don't locate her exactly, or we'll be doxing her.
She could be in any of these episodes, really.
Yeah.
Maybe not Utopia as much. I'd have a hard time. Yeah.
I have a hard time seeing her in the at the end of the world. I don't think she's needed there. The end of the universe, rather. I think, to me, it's always kind of begged belief that Martha could walk the planet on her own, even in a year, and spread the word far enough and wide enough. I think that she needs some help on that. So I like the idea that Clara is there, just going around doing the same thing. Yeah,
essentially, I had a similar thought in that she's kind of, if there's any kind of resistance on the Master Earth, she's part of it, and she's basically running interference for Martha. So she's sort of distracting and decoying for the Toclafane, because let's remember, like they said it, there's 6 billion Toclafane. It sort of strains credulity to think that Martha could go anywhere, frankly, without being spotted, especially since the Master knew she escaped. So there's got to be, they show her being helped, but I think there's a much bigger network of people helping her, and Clara is a big part of it. So that's my thought.
Yeah, agreed. I think that there's a lot of stuff that's necessary behind the scenes in those last 2 episodes, and we can put it all on Clara's shoulders.
Awesome. All right. So now that brings us to the final question, the only question, the one that matters. What do we think of this episode? And we have our rating system to guide us. Of course, they are, for those that are just joining us here at Pull to Open, we rate things with 4 different categories. First is a Dalek, which is a good episode of Doctor Who. Next is an Ogron, which is perhaps not so good episode of Doctor Who. Then we have the Professor Hater, which is, this is not so great, but you know what? At least we learned something. And then there is, of course, the Viscount Banger, which is the rating we reserved for the best of the best that Doctor Who has to offer.
Yes, well, I am going to give my answer to this. It's probably not a surprise. I'm going to give it in the form of the lyrics from Voodoo Child, as played in this story. Banger, banger, banger. You are my Viscount child. My Viscount child. That's my answer. It's a Viscount banger all the way through. Each one individually would have been a Viscount banger. Together, it's a triplet of bangers.
How can it not be? This is such a Viscount banger. It's got so much more it adds to the Doctor-Master relationship. It's just a great plot for all the reasons we talked about. It's got Derek frickin' Jacobi, for Christ's sake.
That's right.
He's there. I mean, amazing.
Not only Derek Jacobi, it dares to kill off Derek Jacobi.
Right?
Take that, Game of Thrones. You think that killing off Sean Bean in episode 9 is a big deal? No, we're going to kill off Derek Jacobi. Derek mother-frickin' Jacobi in the first episode of this trilogy.
Yeah, and you get John Sim, his best performance as the Master, so great. Yes, this is absolutely a Viscount banger for the ages. Honestly, I don't know if there's a more satisfying master story that they've told. This is just such a great one to come back to every now and
then. Certainly no more satisfying three-parter, which is to continue the randomizer. Another reason for the randomizer stickers here, to really just hammer it home that there were more three-parters, and three-parters are good, actually.
That's
Planet
true.
of Giants.
Yeah, the randomizer loves to rub salt in the wound. Yes, we've screwed that up. Planet of the Giants is far from the only three-pounder. We get it, randomizer.
Yeah, okay.
Speaking of you, randomizer, hey, don't go away. We need you, because you know what? It's time, now that we have finished, finally, dear listener, our commentary on this three-parter, and we need to go back into our paradox machine and figure out where we're going next by activating the randomizer.
That's right. We're decoupling the paradox engine tubes and the cage that our TARDIS has been held in, and we are reactivating the codex, which Pete is looking at. I do not see the codex when I hit the executor, but the codex is our list of stories. From 1 to 302 of discrete Doctor Who stories. And then the randomness element is provided by random.org, which uses Toclophane bouncing around the atmosphere. No, maybe Toclophane, who even knows? But random atmospheric noise, atoms bouncing around up there that they tend to do a lot, which creates actual randomness, not the pseudo-randomness of a sonic screwdriver or even a computer algorithm. Who'd have Sonic? Yes. So I am standing by with the executor. Pete has the codex. Together, this is the randomizer, and we always like to issue challenges to the randomizer. So, Pete, what have you got?
Oh, I've been racking my brain about this to be all clever, get some aspect. But you know what? I'm just going to be very self-serving. Get us something short. Please, we just did a three-parter. Get us like a two-parter, but one of the old two-parters, so that it's literally like an hour or so, or just a NuWho episode that's kind of a light snack, just something short. That'd be nice. Thank you, randomizer.
It's a nice problem to have, isn't it? Oh no, I've got to watch tons of Doctor Who over the. I'm going to say, give us a Tom Baker.
Oh,
which may or may not be short. Well, it probably isn't, but maybe an old four-parter. Most commonly what he did. But the reason is that there is a connection with the sound of drums, which is that there's a wonderful moment where the Master speaks to the nation, and he opens by saying, "Britain, Britain, Britain." Now, those in the know that is a reference to Little Britain, a comedy show that was on roughly the same time, where the narration, the voiceover at the start that begins the speech going Britain, Britain, Britain with every episode, and it's slightly different every time. That narration is by Tom Baker. So there is actually a Tom Baker reference in The Sound of Drums. So that's why, and that sort of reminded me of like, well, this is, we haven't seen a lot of his stuff, and he's probably the Doctor most ill-served by the randomizer at the moment, obviously not counting Paul McGann. We've just not done a lot of his stuff. So
that's true, like especially considering he did so much of it, and we've only done, we've done a decent amount, just there's still a lot. Still a lot to do. Yeah,
it doesn't reflect the bulk of Baker material. So let's get that over with. Also, I may be secretly hoping that the randomizer doesn't listen to me and gives us a shorter NuWho instead. There may be some psychology at work here. So, yeah. Well,
all right.
If you give me the countdown, I'll hit the button.
It is about time. Let's do this. Okay. We're turning it on now in 4, 3, 2, 1.
Unstable.
90.
90. Oh wait, I didn't hear you. Oh no, it's time locked. It's the Talons of Wang Chiang.
Oh, so it did hear me.
Yeah. It's not short, so it's definitely messing with me. But we got another roll of the dice, so it has another chance to really mess with me and give us something super.
You know what else? I was going to say, I was almost going to phrase it as give us a diamond logo story. Because that would give us the last season of Pertwee. Yeah. Since we're getting that back. All right, give me another countdown.
Again. All right, shaving a second off the countdown. It's 3, 2, 1.
Could I have a lemonade?
24.
24.
Super old school.
The Gunfighters. Yeehaw!
Speaking of British versions of America, and it was always the West, here we are.
Interesting. Okay, a four-parter of the Hartnell era. Yeah. We have not
and reputedly
done...
one of the worst, right?
Well, reputedly for some. Some people hold it up as something interesting and cool that they did. We have definitely never done a Dodo and Steven episode.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's almost a reference to the Feast of Stephen without taking us to the Dalek Master Plan. But
yeah, I'll take that as a Christmas gift. Sure. Thanks, Randomizer. All right. Looking forward to this one. I remember seeing this when it came up in the PBS run years and years ago. Definitely interesting.
Oh, wow. I have not seen it at all. I'm looking
Speaking of coming from here, the sound of drums and this trilogy where music was used interestingly.
Yes.
This is another one where music is used very interestingly. So perhaps the first time it was.
Player.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, folks. Looking forward to that. Thank you very much for listening to us here as we talked about Utopia, The Sound of Drums, and Last of the Time Lords. This is Pull to Open. It is a podcast, in case you weren't sure. Yes, you can subscribe to it because it's a podcast. You can subscribe to it on any service you want. Apple, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast. We're on YouTube as well. Subscribe there. It's a good place to do it because we also have a lot of good videos that we cut from the podcast, and we have all our plot summaries, and there's a lot of good discussion, believe it or not, on YouTube. Yes, there is. So check that out. Follow us on social, TikTok. We are always uploading videos, loving the interaction there. We're at Pull2Open, all one word, and also on Instagram and Twitter at Pull2Open63. We will be back next week.
Enjoy your holidays. We will see you in the OK Corral. Take care.
Merry Christmas to all, and take care.